Hello everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm joined by Budget PTCG, and today we're making another tier list. This one is on the new cards from the new set, Silver Tempest, and we're looking at them. The set's not out yet, it's going to be out in I guess a month or so. I guess yeah, about that time. And so most of these aren't the official English translations. A few of them are, but the rulings are all out and stuff. And then these are proxies in English. So from Justin Basil's website, I should have that link down below in the description. And yeah, so it's SABCF. So no D tier like I sometimes do. Honestly, if it's in D, it's really bad anyway, or it's in C. So yeah, and these aren't all the cards. There are some cards that are really bad, so we don't have them here because that's kind of silly. But yeah, so we'll start off with We'll start off with the energy, then do the trainers, then the Pokemon. I think that makes the most sense here. I'm gonna start off with regenerative energy, which is a special energy. It's a colorless energy, which is pretty standard. It essentially only works on Pokemon V. You can attach it to anything, but it's only useful on Vs. And then when you evolve that V into either like a V Star or V Max, you heal 100. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, when I first heard about this card, I misunderstood it and I thought it healed 100 when you played it on a V, in which case it would be a very good card. But you're playing it to the V, the basic V, and most of the time, if the V is getting attacked, it's going to get knocked out. So the energy's just not going to help you. Um, so I think it's very limited.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes not all decks can hit like 200, 220 damage consistently. Like Arceus, Gudra, and Lost Zone and single price decks can't necessarily do that, but a lot of decks can. And also, you don't really want to be attacking and having your V in the active anyways, so it's not like that good. However, there's one interesting combo I thought of with this that was you'd use Blissey V, and then you'd obviously accelerate the energy, and then you'd get hit into, and so you'd have damage on you, and then you could use Thornton to switch into some other Pokemon. Obviously, that Pokemon needs to be a V and has enough health that it won't just die, so you could put Cape on if you have to. And then you can, I was thinking Dialga V, and then you'd evolve it into Dialga V Star, have a bunch of energy, and then have fully restored health.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, is a very interesting card for it. I guess also if people are spreading damage around with something like Sableye, it's a you can kind of heal things up. So, I mean, I'm guessing it's probably like a C tier though. It's not going to see a lot of use, I don't think.
Yeah, I think I might even say F tier. Like the idea with the Blissey combo is kind of funny. I don't know. Do you think C or it could be F as
I
well?
I mean, honestly, when you read the card, what I thought is it should be D tier, which obviously you left off. So it's kind of that in between,
I'll say
right?
it's F. I've looked at the other cards here, and I think it might be one of the worst cards here. So I'll put in F for now. It just doesn't. It's not very good. I think. But the other special energy here, V Guard energy, is really interesting. Another colorless energy, and it is attached to I think any Pokemon, and that Pokemon it's attached to takes 30 less from Pokemon V, and so that's really nice. Just damage reduction. It's not like anything amazingly powerful, but there are a lot of decks that can play stuff like Capture Energy because they have colorless requirements in their attack cost, and so I think this card is pretty solid.
Now, as I'm reading the text here, the last sentence is you can't apply this effect of V-Guard energy more than once to a Pokemon. So that means if you have multiple V-Guard energies, you only apply one, or
Yeah.
is that
The this effect it's you can have multiple energies, and each energy will still pay the attack cost, but
right?
it won't stack and do more healing or more of a
Okay,
damage reduction.
so that hurts it some that you can't really try to build up something super tanky. But it's very useful and it's better generally than 30 more HP because it reduces over multiple attacks. So having a V and something tanky certainly gets a boost from this card.
Yeah, I think it could see play in like Hisuian Gudra V Star. That
Hmm.
that could be really good. Although that deck's a bit awkward to set up anyways, but it could be nice. And also maybe Arceus and probably not Arceus, but there I think it's has good potential down the line.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, you don't see big play now, but you have the fire one that protects. You have the stone one, the
Yeah.
fighting one, and they see niche play, but now you have something that works on any Pokemon, so it's definitely going to see play.
Yeah, I'd say it's might be A, maybe B. What do you think?
I'm inclined to say B tier. It might be a high B tier. I'm not sure how much use it will actually get.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those cards that looks like it has potential definitely, but it's
Hmm.
not like it could just like completely flop. So I think B's fine. And that's the all the special energy I believe. So now onto the trainers, and I think I'll look at Serena next, which is really interesting. It's a supporter, and apparently this is Serena's first printing in Pokemon, even though she's a pretty major character. But she it has the effect of you choose between one of two effects. So you either discard up to 3 cards from your hand, and then if you discard any cards in this way, you draw until you have 5 cards in hand, so decent draw. Or you just gust one of your opponent's Pokemon V into the active. The bench Pokemon is a Pokemon V. Their current active can be whatever. So yeah,
Yeah, it's an interesting card with the options. Obviously, Boss is a tremendous card, and that's one of the options. It limited to V Pokemon, so that it reduces it some. But in a sense, when you play the Serena with the first option, discard three, draw to five. It's kind of like the barrel in a supporter in a sense.
yeah, it's
You
it's
know, you thin your hand some, and then you draw a bunch. But of course, you don't get to play another supporter after it. So it's a pretty good card. I is it where is it going to fit in? And was it better just to play Boss and Marnie research over this? I'm not sure.
yeah. I think. Oh, and by the way, the first effect is almost the same as Sightseer if you don't know, which is a card that's discard any number of cards and then you draw until you have 5. I believe, unless I'm thinking of the wrong card. But there's a card, a supporter like that. It's a bit weaker, but honestly, you're not going to have massive hands all the time, anyways. So it's pretty good. But then I think it's honestly, I think this card's really good. Most of the time that you play boss's orders, it's on a Pokemon V. Probably
Hmm.
3/4 of the time, maybe more. So I think it might replace boss in a lot of decks. I think this is an S tier card.
Maybe. I mean, if it becomes the new Gust, the main Gust card, it is, and it could do that. Um, it's S or A. I'd say it falls in that area.
Yeah, okay, I'm putting it in S. I think this card's absolutely insane. It's like there are so many times, or not that there are a bunch of times when you look at your hand and you're like, oh, I have boss's orders and nothing else, and you can play 4 of this in your deck, and now you have um, either 4 extra supporters to draw cards or 4 extra boss. And it's not the best draw effect, but it's not bad either. Especially if you have discard synergy. If you have discard synergy, I imagine this is a 4 of in your deck. If you don't have discard synergy, you might not want to play a ton because obviously discarding cards from your hand can be really bad at times. But I think the card's solidly in. I think it's definitely an A, but I do think it belongs in S. Now we move on to Lance, which apparently is also his first appearance in the TCG. And it's a support card, again, of course, that says search your deck for up to 3 dragon Pokemon and put them into your hand. So, what do you think about this?
That's an interesting one. I mean, Dragon are not certainly on the rise with options out there and probably continuing. I don't know what Pokemon we have coming out in this set, but I'm sure there's going to be some Dragon ones in it too. Um, and obviously they can be basic or evolution, which is nice. So which will probably be a V and a V star. Um, it's so in a sense, then it's kind of like Adventurer's Discovery, right? Which if
Yeah.
it's focused on V, but Adventurer's Discovery is generally better because it's not just Dragon. especially if you're playing like an Arceus slash Dragon deck, which is common. You don't really want this in that deck.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it's if you're just playing Pokemon V, it's obviously better just to use Adventures Discovery. And I think a big part of the reason that Adventures Discovery is uh, on the on the edge of being viable and not just completely bad is that you can search out stuff like Crobat or Luminion, and you don't have that option with Lance here. There's a new looking ahead. There's a new Dragon V Star that's pretty good here, and obviously there's stuff like Giratina and Gudra, as well as Duraludon. So there are decent options, but there's no like Dragon Engine, and I think that's what scares me the most. And honestly,
Yeah,
I don't think this is really gonna see any play.
probably not, unless there becomes some single prize dragon Pokemon that get played, which at this point I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't think that's too likely. So I'm gonna put it in. Do you think C or F?
Uh, I'd probably put it in F, but it's a tough. It could go either.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go and yeah, I'll put in F. Okay, so we have the last supporter card here, which is Furasode Girl, which says that you search your deck for a basic Pokemon and then you put it onto your bench, and then you shuffle your deck, obviously, and then you can switch that into the active spot, the basic that you just put into play.
Okay, so we search for a basic, which is it goes to your bench, which you can do with items. So doing it with supporters is certainly bad.
Yeah.
Then you shuffle obviously, but then you can switch. So it's a quick ball and switch or air balloon combined. But I don't want to use my supporter for that. I don't think. I don't see it as a very strong card.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think this might be the worst card we've looked at so far. It's pretty bad. It's like why it feels like you're just wasting your supporter completely. So I think it's probably F tier.
Yeah, and putting it at the bottom of F tier probably is appropriate. I can see the other cards might see use in some situations.
Yeah, yeah. Now we got and that's all the supporters that we're covering. There are some others. There's one that I don't know. They're bad, so we're not really gonna talk about them. But now we have an interesting tool card here called well, it's translated as Leafy Camo Poncho. I don't think that's gonna be the name here. It's kind of weird, but pretty much if it's attached to a V Star or a V Max, whenever your opponent plays a supporter from their hand for an all effects of that card done to your Pokemon. So pretty much it stops gusting on your V Stars and V Maxes.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one in that it's a tool, so it you're not using your supporter. There's Diancie now in the active, which stops things, but here it doesn't. It can be on your bench too, or the active. You protect just that Pokemon, so
Yeah.
I, it's going to be a card certainly to consider, and we'll see how much play it actually gets to be able to protect your V from being bossed up. Now, Cross Switcher still goes through it, so
Yeah.
but I imagine it'll get some play.
Yeah. One other thing I'm a bit concerned about is the fact that it can be removed from play by something like a tool scrapper or a lost vacuum. So like it's you're not guaranteed to be safe. Something like Diancie, you're not guaranteed either because of cross switcher. But if you know your opponent's not playing cross switcher, then they can't do it. So the this is a tool card is a bit risky, and it's most useful I think when your V's like taking damage and then like V Max or V Star, and then you can retreat it to the bench, and now your opponent can't take the KO. So they've just wasted a hit into a big Pokemon. So I think that's the main use. But because you can remove it, the tool, and there's a decent amount of tool removal in the format, I I think it might be like a B tier card, maybe upper B.
Yeah, and maybe it's even a little lower. Because as I think about it more, I'm not sure how many decks right now would actually want to use the card, even not without having to worry about it getting removed.
I think it can be really good. Like if you're playing something like just say Arc or Palkia, a deck without healing, Your opponent hits into your Palkia, they probably don't one shot it. Now you can go ahead and retreat it to the bench, and then they can't KO it. And it's just like, well, assuming they don't have spread or cross switcher, which some decks do, but now it's safe, and your opponent just is in a really bad spot. And now at the end of the game as well, you can bring it into the active for the final KO. So I think it's quite nice. I think the effect is very good. We saw the same effect on Umbreon, or a similar effect with Umbreon VMAX's tool, and Espeon, the Sun and Moon badge, which actually has seen a little bit of play. When I say a little bit, I mean very niche, but it's a good effect because you get like turns that your opponent just wastes because of this.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I'm thinking through, like, if I wanted to just go with, say, an Arceus deck, I attack with Arceus. I don't want to, I can't use my Sharon's Care that turn. I retreat to the bench, protect the one, and then I could say Melanie or something to set up an attacker with the idea of Sharon's carrying maybe the following turn. So,
Yeah, you don't even need to share and scare because it's theoretically safe for the entire game, because they won't be able to target it down now.
yeah, and at this point, till rotation, maybe you play, it's just V stars and V maxes, not basic Vs, though.
No, it's not basic Vs.
Okay, so that because I was thinking like a Crobat V, I could play it, protect it, which would be very nice,
Yeah,
but
that'd
that
be nice.
doesn't help with that.
No, so I think it's upper B. I think the fact that it can just be removed is like really bad because obviously then your opponents like can just win, if you're like doing it to not lose that turn. But I think it's a good
Yep.
card.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Oh, and we got a few more tools. I actually forgot about them,
Yep.
that are really interesting. They give V Star powers to the Pokemon they're attached to, and they can, I believe, be attached to any Pokemon V. It doesn't need to be a V Max or it can be a V Max or a V Star or a V. Obviously, you can only use one V Star power per game, so if you're in a V Star deck already that uses one, you probably don't want these. But the first one, translated as Earthen Seal Stone, says the attack star gravity that you put damage counters on all your opponent's Pokemon V until they have 100 health left, and this is 3 colorless energy, so it's not super cheap, but it's payable in a lot of decks, and I think yeah, it's interesting.
And even though it's an attack, it's a V star power. So you can't like you play an Arceus, use the V star power earlier, get cards, and then you can't use this
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
attack. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting option though, getting them all down to 100. Now you still have a decent amount of work to knock them out, but you could use that and do some spread things, Sableye, pinging, and maybe clean things up.
Yeah, or I was thinking Lunala from uh, Celebrations, which doubles damage counters on all your opponent's Pokemon. There are also things like, say, Salamence VMAX or Noivern V,
Mm-hmm.
that, and you can use it on those Pokemon because they're all Vs, so you can
Yep.
mix this in, and it's interesting. It won't ever get any KOs though, which is really unfortunate. I don't think this card's too good. Like, I'd much rather use like it's not a very good V Star power. It's not that bad, but I think this is probably a C tier because it's a lot to set up, and it's not great.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a very intriguing, it's a fun card, right? It's a kind of a card to make a very janky deck with that probably isn't going to get you very far.
Yeah, and also like there are a lot of decks that don't play a ton of Pokemon V. If you're against a deck like Eternatus, which obviously plays a lot of Pokemon V, and Pokemon in general, but or some other deck that plays a lot of Pokemon V, like just 3 Pokemon V, you can hit them and then you can just KO all of them within a few turns, and then you'll just win. But a lot of decks, like say Arceus or Palkia, just play 2 Vs down at once, and so you're only doing like, I mean, you're doing like 200, 300 damage across the board, but it's not really concentrated, so it's pretty weak, I think. But then we have the next one, which is really interesting, and it is called Forest Sealstone, and it's of course a V-Star power. It can be attached to any Pokemon V, and it has an amazing ability here called Star Alchemy that says you just search for any card and put it into your hand. So your deck for any card. And yeah, it's obviously like half of Arceus' power, but it can be used on any V or V Max or V Star.
Yeah, that one's very a lot more intriguing. One question is if I'm playing a V Star deck, I most of the V Stars have V Star powers that are often a little better than this.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't play this in many V Star decks, I think.
Right, so it's going to be a V or a V Max deck that would utilize it. And certainly if you're playing a deck that's a V or V Max deck, you're probably going to want to consider it at least.
Yeah, I think it's. Oh, and there's a ruling actually for this, which is interesting as well. But the idea that any V and V Max deck will want to play, I think, is really true. Or I think any V or V Max deck that doesn't have another V Star power will want to play this because it's so good, and you can use this turn one as well. So like normally you don't think that you can use V Star powers turn one unless you're maybe an expanded or something, but you can do this. You can just stick it on um, anything and just go ahead and get what you need. So that's really good. And so you can stick it on something like a Crobat V, and I think even decks
Hmm.
like maybe Mad Party or something. That's not a particularly good deck, but it plays Crobat and maybe Luminion, and you can just stick this on,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden you've got any card you want, and it's not wasting your V Star power because you're not using it anyway.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. As I'm thinking, like the Mew deck, you get this Cram-O-Matic turn one, get your VIP pass then down. I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll definitely get used.
Yes, and then the cherry on top of this is actually that like say you give the example of Mew V Max, which I think it doesn't have any V Star power. It's a big V heavy deck, and it's getting any card at any point in the game is pretty nice. So I imagine this will see play in that deck. But then if you're thinking, oh, the worst thing for Mew V Max to see might be Path to the Peak.
Hmm.
Well, this card isn't turned off by Path to the Peak. Um, Based on the wording of, I think Path to the Peak, essentially you can use this, and I believe Galarian Weezing also doesn't turn this off because the Pokemon don't have the ability. They're just using the ability. It's kind of strange, but you can put this onto your Genesect or whatever. Your opponent plays Path to the Peak, and you're like, oh, I can't draw any cards, but I can still use this. And then you can grab, say, another Stadium or something to counter it, or just whatever you need, and it ignores Path, which is so good.
Yeah, that's really that makes the card even better. So it's definitely it's going to get used. It's not just going to get tried out. I think it's going to find a place in a lot of decks.
Yeah, so I I'm tempted to say this is an S tier card.
Maybe. I mean, it's at least an A.
Yeah,
I'm not. It's one or the other.
yeah. I guess we can put in. Nah, yeah, we'll put an A. I think it will see play in. It's useful in every deck that plays Pokemon V that isn't a V Star deck. But the question is, are you able to hit the item? And you might not be able to. So I guess it's not. It's not like turn one do anything. It's just like when you get it, you get some extra oomph. So now we're moving on to the Pokemon, and I think I'll look at the fun gimmick line first here, which is made up of Togedemaru. Let's see. This line is weird. I think it's Dedenne, uh, Pikachu, and more Pico. It's all the Pikachu, or some of the Pikachu clones. Starting with Togedemaru here, which is Metal type. Although all these Pokemon attack for only one Lightning, so it's pretty cheap to pay. One thing to note about the attack cost being Lightning is that you can use Speed Lightning, but if you attach it to one of the Pokemon that aren't Pikachu, you're not going to draw the cards. So that's something to point out, I guess. But so it has Togedemaru has an interesting attack called Togedash, which says it does 10 for one Lightning. Flip a coin, and if heads, if this Pokemon is knocked out during your opponent's next turn, They don't take any prize cards from it. And I'm gonna talk about all of them now. They all, I think, have 80 HP, so that's cool. Now the Dedenne, which is a psychic type, which has the attack of Dede short, which does 60 for one lightning, which isn't bad. Not great, but it's okay. And then you can only use this attack, though, if Togedemaru used Togedash last turn, and the defending Pokemon is now paralyzed. So that's obviously pretty good. And then we got Pikachu here, which is, unsurprisingly, can only be used if Dedenne used Dede Short last turn, and it does 20 for one lightning. Or I guess it can be used if they haven't used it, but it will only do 20 damage. However, did, if you did use Dede Short last turn, it does 200 damage for one lightning, which is obviously very good. And then the last one is Morpeko, which you can also only use if you use Dedenne's attack last turn. So Pikachu or Morpeko are your two options at the end of the chain, and you do 60 to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So yeah, that's a lot.
Oh, yeah, it's very much a set. It's very much a gimmick too. I'm just trying to think, is there any people are going to try it out, certainly. It seems fun to try, but can you reasonably make it happen? Because this is three plays in a row. I just don't see it as really viable.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing to keep in mind, I was thinking you could use Baby Ditto from Pokemon Go to copy their attacks, but you can't do that because it needs to be that Pokemon to have used the attack. But I was kind of thinking, at least with the Togedemaru, flipping hedge is really good because then they're probably not taking a prize, or they're unless they can gust. So that's pretty nice. So you could play Glimwood Tangle to start off the sequence well, but it's kind of weird.
You can, but you do have the stage one that you don't take any damage if you flip heads. So
Yeah.
is this really better than that? Because it does 10 damage, which
Yeah.
isn't
Well,
really getting you far.
it's to set it up before to like hopefully maintain a decent prize trade while you're moving along with the different steps of the combo.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have the Glumatangle in play, another piece. And then the Dedenne with Dede Short doing 60 isn't great either. So you've had two very suboptimal turns to get to the third turn is where the payoff is.
Yeah, I think the both the Togedemaru and Dedenne though provide really big disruption. Dedenne doing guaranteed paralysis is it's nice. It definitely messes with a lot of decks. And obviously being saying if you get KO'd you don't give up prizes, that's amazing too. So I think it's not too like it's not like too bad losing attacking with the first two, but the Pikachu it only does 200 for 200 for one lightning is really good on a basic. And then
Yep.
Morpeko doing a 60 spread to all the benches. It's nice. I'm a bit nervous though that the end payoff after 3 turns of attacking isn't quite good enough.
Right. I mean, 200 is good, but three turns to get to 200 is not enough. And then 60 spread is really nice, but you're not probably taking any knockouts with that. So 3 turns to not knock anything out, that's not good either.
Yeah, I mean, if you're against like Inteleon Engine with Sobbles, you might. But people are even starting to play the 70 HP Sobble, so like that's not good because then you're not going to KO them. So I think this is. I don't think these are F tier, but I think they're like C tier.
Yeah, well, and the other problem is people know what's coming. You have the option of the final of the last step, which of the two you choose, but they know what you're setting up, so they're gonna not bench anything 60 or less HP that turn.
Yeah, but I mean, if they like don't bench stuff, like if your opponent's say playing Palkia, and they're like, okay, I'm not going to bench any Sabos this turn, they might get in a bad spot because they now they can't go in with um they can't like go in with the Shade Dealing Drizzles possibly.
Okay, I mean, I can't see it above C myself, but
Yeah, no, I don't think I can either. I think C. So, I'm gonna try these out though. They're not like completely trash, and they look really fun as well. So I'm excited for them. Up next though, we also have another gimmicky set of Pokemon. Not quite as much as the Pikachu guys, but we got the what are they called? Like the swords or something? The the I don't remember. I think they're Gen 5 or 6 or something. And they had a movie. I'm trying to find all of them. It's yes, Terrakion, Virizion, Cobalion, and Keldeo. I guess I'll start with Cobalion, which just says attacks on your basic Pokemon do 30 more to your opponent's dark Pokemon, which is pretty specific. And then it also has an attack for two colorless that does 30, which is pretty underwhelming. And then you choose two of your bench Pokemon. For each of them, search for a basic energy and attach it to that Pokemon so it can set them up nicely. And you can obviously pay that with twin energy as well. And then I'll talk about, I guess, and Cabalion's metal type, if you didn't know that. And then Terrakion, which is a fighting type, which actually doesn't really fit in with any of them, but you need to play it for reasons that I'll explain in a second. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon during opponent's next turn. If you use the attack Cavern Tackle, which does 120, but it's fighting, colorless, so quite a big cost for a mediocre attack, and you can't use Cavern Tackle multiple turns in a row, which is unsurprising. So you're not like invincible forever, but that's not a bad attack. And then we have I guess Virizion, which is grass type, and all of them have like 120-ish HP as well. And it has the attack 4 is 1, which Keldeo also has, but it says for one colorless, if you have Cobalion, Terrakion, and Keldeo on your bench, which is the other three, then this attack does 70 more, otherwise it only does 20. So 90 for one in a basic, not too bad, and it's not too hard to pull off turn 1 either. And then we got Keldeo, which does 4 is 1 as well, but it's base damage of 50 for water, colorless. And if you have Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion on your bench as well, the other three, it does 170 more, so 220 for 3 energy on a single prize basic.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to think through how useful it's going to be. The Virizion, which does 90 if they're all in play, kind of reminds me of the Pokemon that can hit for 90 or so. If like right, the dark one you swing to the
Yeah,
active.
Hoopa.
The fire, if you have damage on it, it does 90.
Yeah,
The Moltres
yeah,
and stuff, right? So and those are easier to pull off than this one. So I'm certainly not excited about Verizon needing 4 in play to get
yeah,
it. Um, it's the Keldeo is the big one.
yeah,
The other two are mediocre. So is it worth it to get Keldeo? But it's 3 energy, which isn't going to be always easy to pull off. Am I going to have to use the Lost Zone engine to Mirage Gate? Because I have to get it set up, I assume, in 1 turn.
yeah.
I have to get.
You could just Raihan though, and also you have the option of attacking with Cobalion to set it up, but then you're obviously your opponent has the option to KO Keldeo.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. In some ways, it may be a little bit easier to pull off than the other ones, the Pikachu set,
Yeah,
because you can sequence it however you want. You just need to get them in play together. But I don't see it as probably being all that strong.
yeah. I think these are. I don't know. Their payoff isn't that good, but I think these might be. I'd say they're probably like upper C. The Tracheon being completely invincible is kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Um, the deck feels like kind of just random cards thrown around. Um, but I think I'd say it's upper C.
Yeah, I mean, Tracheon Invincible is great, but now you need 3 energy and 2 of them have to be fighting. So you can't just Raihan and Twin Energy to pull it off. So it's going to
Yeah,
be harder to set up. So I think upper C is fair, though.
yeah. I wonder if any of them will see play in like a really interesting fashion. You could just say Tekken a 1-1-1-1 and like attack with Rosian or something. It's obviously a lot for not a ton of payoff, but the type coverage is kind of interesting. It's kind of like a baby Reggie's deck or something. Um, and now let's talk about. I guess Braixen, which is a stage one, and Delphox, which is the stage two, both fire types. And the breaks they have the same attack, but breaks in for two colors on a stage one does 60 for each Serena card in your discard pile, which is this really good supporter we looked at earlier. And then Delphox does the same thing, but only for one color since it's on a stage two. So that's pretty good. Obviously, that maxes out at 240, assuming no damage modifiers have been applied. And then it also has an attack for two colorless energy. The Delphox is stage two. That does 50 for each energy attached to all your opponent's Pokemon. So a bit of a different option if that's how you want to go out with that Pokemon.
Yeah, this one's pretty interesting. Obviously, if you play this, you're playing the four Serenas, which we talked about as being a good card. That both the stage one and the stage two are viable, so you're not just relying on the stage two and having to rare candy to make something useful. The energy crush attack, 50 per all the energy on your opponent's Pokemon, and that's all of them, not just the active, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
So that, depending on what you're up against, will could one shot a big Pokemon
Yep.
if they're a big energy deck. So yeah, I mean it's definitely something that is worthwhile trying out.
Yeah, I think it's with the Energy Crush, it's very good against like Arceus Vista, notably. It's mostly just that, but I think this might be like like upper B tier maybe. It's not great, but for like a single price deck, it's pretty solid, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable place in the B tier, and it's definitely going to get use. And I think it's not going to be a top tier deck, but it can be a viable deck, I think.
Yeah, I'm comparing it to like Leon's Charizard, and it hits a little weaker, but it's a better supporter card, which is really nice.
Mhm.
And it's a stage one, so I think it's
Right.
probably B. It's not. Are we gonna keep the two together as well?
Yeah, I think that yeah, I keep them together.
Yeah. So I think it'll probably be like a four breaks-ins and maybe two Delphox or something, and probably won't play Rare Candy. I don't know if the
Right.
deck will play energy that's not too colorless because there's not really like you don't want to attach a capture energy and then not be able to attack with breaks in or something like that. But I think it's a very solid single prize attacker from this new set. We'll look at this. We'll look at Incineroar next, I guess, which is we have to take a look at the whole line here. I'll start off with the Incineroar though, which is a stage two, and it has two attacks for the one's two fire energy that just does 180, and it discards all energy attached to this Pokemon. And it has 170 health, which is nice. And then it has another attack that I think will sound very familiar to you called Secret Attack, but you just copy one of your previous evolution's attacks, and you don't need to use that as don't need to pay that attack cost. And then obviously looking at the previous evolutions, the stage one has an attack called Gritty Claws, and the attack cost is 2 fire, though that doesn't matter if you're copying it. And you do 40 damage, which is obviously not very good. But then during your next turn, this Pokemon, assuming this Pokemon has full HP, and it would be knocked out, it's not knocked out, and it only has 10 HP left. So that's nice. You're invincible essentially for that turn. Then it has an attack on the basic for 2 fire, reprisal that does 20 for each damage counter on this Pokemon, which is really good, obviously, if you're down to 10 HP. And then also has the stage 1 has an attack that does 70 for 3, so 70 for 1 on a stage 2 is not great, but it's an option.
Yeah, it's an interesting card. Similar, it reminds of the Empoleon from the theme deck that copies the previous attacks. For 1 energy, because the stage 1 is such a key part of this thing, you're not going to rare candy from the Litten to the Incineroar, I don't think, because you're going to want to have all 3 out there, 1 energy. You do Gritty Claws. Now you're only doing 40, which isn't great, so maybe it's
Yeah.
not, that hurts it a lot. But then you don't get knocked out. You go down to 10 HP, which means you have 160 damage. Then you do Reprisal, and so 160 times 2, so you're doing 320. but that's 2 turns to get it in a stage two that you've had to play all 3 cards to get there. So it's a downside, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. 320 will essentially one shot anything, and with that 40 poke, in addition to it, it'll probably KO anything except for maybe a Gudra or something, which doesn't even. I mean, it does enough to one shot you, but so that's really nice. There are some things that can hit through the Genora's attack, um, and there are also Pokemon like say Galarian Zigzagoon um, or
Mm,
Inteleon, as well as
yep.
stuff like I don't know, if they can poison you, they'll also KO you. So it's not you're not like it actually invincible, and they can also gust around you. I think it's a bit too awkward. I think it's one of those C tier gimmicks again, but I don't think it's too bad.
Yeah, it's a gimmick, and the flare shot on the stage two is also certainly consideration. 180 for two is good. You could play Magna Basin to accelerate to it. Now then you're putting damage on, which you might not want to do, but that's 180 for two is not bad either.
Yeah, obviously with the damage on, you are not invincible on your next turn then with a
Right.
Torcat or copying that attack of Torcat.
Right.
Would you say like upper C with this, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, of these 3 kind of gimmicky single prizers, this
Or
seems like
four?
it
Wait,
might
which
be.
are the three?
Well, you had the set of with the Virizion, you had the
Oh,
in the Pikachu ones, right?
yeah.
Those
There's
those
also
are
the
both.
Delphox though as well, which is kind of gimmicky.
Yeah, that's true. I'd put it at the top of tier C probably.
Yeah,
I thought.
I think that's fair. It's theoretically like it doesn't look horrible, but I don't think it's particularly great. We got another stage. Well, I guess we'll look at um, two fighting fossil Pokemon. I mean, so it's the Anorith, which is a stage one of Ultimate Fossil, though unidentified fossil, and for 2 colorless energy, you do 30 damage, or you do 30, and then you can discard another unidentified fossil from your hand. If you do this attack, it does 120 more damage, so that's 150 for 2 colors on a stage one. Yeah, let's just look at this one for now.
It, having to get something evolved from the fossil cards is never great, I don't think. So I'm not loving it. Plus, you've got to have another identified fossil in your hand to do the 150 damage, which is what you want to do. So is 150 is very good on a single prizer for a single attachment, but how often can you pull it off? And you can't stream it that many times. So I'm not sure it's going to be that
Yeah,
strong.
the one thing about this though is well, so there's actually another card in this set that helps get it out easier, I guess. I didn't talk about it yet. I honestly don't think it helps it too much, so you probably won't even play it. But that's something to keep in mind, I guess. But then there's also Zoroark, and this is a stage one, so you can
Mhm.
just Zoroark into this, and then you're not wasting your fossils, and you can stream this better and be able to. You could even use this and then use the other Zoroark toolbox cards in it, I think.
Yeah, and as I think the 150 is becoming more viable because we have more single prizers, certainly like with the Lost Zone box and such. So you potentially can one shot things, but if you're up against a single prizer, you've got to stream those attacks turn after turn. So that's a question.
Yeah, I think this is honestly bottom of B. 150 consistently on a stage. Actually, no. This is now I'm thinking about it, comparing it to Hisuian Arcanine, which is a similar deck, Zoroark style. I think this is probably top of C. Maybe it's not great, but I don't think it's the worst. And there's actually a stage two that evolves from this. We'll get to in a second, which has it's okay.
Yeah, I mean that position is certainly reasonable, like high tier C.
Yeah, but not obviously not very good. And then we got and the evolution to this Pokemon. So obviously, stage two, you can rare candy it directly from the fossil if you want, though. And it has the Armaldo has 150 HP in its fighting type, so decent stats there. And then it has an attack for one colorless called Reaper Claw. If the opponent's Pokemon has 100 or less HP remaining, it is knocked out. And now that I think about it, it actually has synergy with Earth and Seal Stone. Although I would not recommend that you play a deck with those two cards because it seems kind of clunky.
Yeah, since Earth and Seal Stone has to be on a V, that makes it very problematic, I think.
Yeah.
But
And it's also a fossil. This is so it's kind of weird.
yeah, it is. Yeah, this doesn't probably help the Anorith. You're gonna play maybe one in it if you're playing that deck or two possibly, but it's not gonna carry you very far.
Yeah, I think this might be like uh, bottom of. I think this might be F.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, because if I'm playing at the stage one deck, I'm probably gonna have to even think whether I want to include the stage two.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. It's not completely useless. It's not good though. So I'll say F. Let's see what Pokemon should we look at next. Let's look at Altaria here, I guess, which is a colorless stage one. And there are also a number of other good Altaria in the format right now. Notably, one that searches for supporters and puts it on the top of your deck, and one that's immune to, I think, Vs and GXs. So that's decent. They're not insane though. But this one is pretty interesting. It has an attack called Magical Echo for two colorless. As I said, on a stage one, move all damage counters from one of your bench Pokemon to your opponent's active Pokemon.
That's interesting, and my mind goes to the leafy camo poncho, which I can have a V Max or V Star that can't be bossed up, so I could run back with something with a lot of damage, and then use the magical echo to move a bunch of damage onto it.
Yeah. With
Is
that,
this
sorry, can I with that combo, if you use it that turn, um, that's not good though because it'll have the damage off before it gets to your opponent's turn anyway. So that's kind of a waste. But I
Yeah.
think it could be useful if you want to wait. But I don't think that combo is particularly strong.
Yeah, I'm and certainly 90 for three. That's a bad attack. So on an evolution Pokemon,
Yeah, that's bad.
so you've got to be. Is there a deck where you can set up some Vs or VMAX Pokemon with a lot of damage counters on it and get that set up consistently? I'm not sure that is out there right now.
Yeah, I mean it's more like if you've been hit already, you can kind of heal it off. You could maybe tech it into Arceus or something, but you'd rather just Sharon's Care probably. And then also the Altair is just gonna die, and it's not like it's absolutely useless against like one-shotting decks. So I think this is one another like maybe top of C tier. It could see play in better decks, I think, but it probably won't.
Yeah, I mean I think like a C tier is reasonable. It's a card to remember though, because there may be a deck at the right time that you end up with big HP damaged Pokemon on the bench, and then you take a few deck slots and put this in.
Yeah, yeah. And with the other Altaria, it's kind of cool. So it's
Yeah.
not the worst card. It's a fun card, but I don't think it's too good. Now let's look at Ariados, which is a grass stage one, and this is one that I honestly really like. It has an ability called String of Shade that says as long as this Pokemon is in play, the attacks to your opponent's Pokemon V Star cost one colorless more, and you can't stack this ability because that would be like really good. But I think this ability is solid.
Yeah, that's very nice, making it much harder for your opponent to attack. Now it's only V stars, so Vs don't get affected, and V maxes while they're in format still, and other ones. But certainly for a deck that you want to go slow, that are some control type aspects to it, this is certainly a strong card.
Yeah, I think there are a few things to note. One, grass Pokemon have a lot of ways to be searched out. You got well, a few. You got Turffield Stadium. You also have Hisui and Lilligant V Star. So you could this could be a resurgence of grass because the grass package has been like building up, and now it has a might have the last piece that it needs to stay in and just be like really strong. Probably not, but it could be good in that, and obviously it could be good in anything. And I think there are a lot of V stars right now. They're probably the most like played type of deck right now. There's a decent amount of single prizes though, and like V maxes. There aren't a ton of V maxes, but there are some. So I think this is. I think this might be top of B though. I think it's a nice line that you might want to tech in a lot of decks as maybe a 1/1.
Yeah, it's an interesting to consider, and certainly if you're playing Zoroark,
Yeah,
you probably are going to throw this in that deck list.
yeah. So I'd say top of B here. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Um, Now let's take a look at the other grass stage one here, Sunflora, which is an interesting attacker that does for 2 colors on a stage one. Pretty common theme there. Discard up to 3 energy cards from your hand. It does base damage of 10, but 70 for each energy discarded. So it can hit up to 220 without any damage modifiers. So that's pretty good.
220 strong. That's certainly very appealing. You can pay for it with a single attachment. Now you're going to have to probably run a little bit of a energy thick deck, which then makes consistency an issue. But that's a really intriguing card, and it's one. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to sit down and start working out a deck with that.
Yeah, you can also use stuff like obviously energy retrieval and training coin. You'll
Mhm.
just play. I imagine you'll play a lot of those, and so you
Yeah.
can just get those back. It's not like it's kind of Baby Blacephalon ish. If you don't know what that did, that does it was a basic, did a very similar attack. It could hit infinite damage, so that's one upside that had that Sunflora doesn't have. And this is stage one as well, which is a bit awkward, but the attack cost is very playable. You could use it as like a Zoroark deck where you have
Mhm.
this and some other stuff, but probably not because it likely won't have synergy with other stuff. But that's an option, and I think it's a solid attacker.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, think it's going to climb up to A tier.
Yeah.
But maybe but it's certainly a strong B. I don't know if it could be yeah, it's probably not a soft A.
Do you think it's between? I'd say it's between below Ariados, the one that increases um, V star attackers, and above the Delphox Braixen line. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's fair, and you probably if you're doing Sunflora, the Ariados may be something you want to play together
The
because you're going to need to
yeah,
slow them down some, I think.
yeah, that could be. I honestly I think Ariados could see playing a lot of things. The issue is obviously how much space do you want to commit to it, because in some matchups it'll just be useless. But I think it's
Right.
Sunflora and B. It's not a bad attacker by any means. Now we got ourselves a Crobat here, a stage 2 dark Pokemon, and it has 2 attacks. Oh, and only has 130 health, but has free retreat, so mediocre stats. Doesn't matter too much though. But then it has Poison Fang, 50 for 1 dark. Pretty, and it poisons him, so that's not great, but not the worst. And then its second attack, Critical Bite for 3 colorless, which is an interesting attack here that does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. But if any of your opponent's Pokemon were KO'd by this, then you take 2 more prizes. So, yeah, 30 obviously not a lot, but it can do it anywhere as well. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that one's really interesting. So you're taking 3 prizes.
Or more.
Uh, right. Yeah, that's true. If it's a multi-prizer, it's even more. You haven't obviously to get the damage to where you need it to be, but the uh, the Rapid Strike Pokemon that did 20, which and then you attack again. That was
Metacham.
Metacham. Yeah, that saw play. So getting it down to 30, it's certainly doable. Um, it's interesting. The first attack though, 50 on the stage two, even with the poison, is a not a very strong attack.
Yeah. the thing I'm concerned about, you compared it to Metacham, but Metacham was a basic and it was pretty easy to pay. Versus this is a
Yeah.
stage two, and you need to probably Raihan or something to get the energy on. It's pretty crazy for just. I mean, taking three prizes is good. We've seen it on or two extra prizes. We saw it on, I
Mm,
believe, Greed and VMAX, which has seen some play,
yeah.
but that was easier to pay. I think this is. I'm tempted to say F because it just seems so unplayable.
It could be. I mean, because if you use double turbo to pay it, then you're only doing 10 damage. Like Rayhan
Yeah,
double turbo. So that, the odds of knocking out with that 10 are even less. So
yeah,
yeah, it might be an F. It'd be fun if it could work, but it probably can't.
yeah. I think it's one of the weaker um, cards that are on this list. Now we got. Let's take a look at Jinx, I guess, which is an interesting psychic basic Pokemon that has an attack that you should be familiar with. I think you were playing with this attack earlier today. It's two colorless, but it does 10 and then 10 more for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. It's not an amazing attack, but it's there. But then its ability called Selfish Lips. That's kind of weird. But if this Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon V, that includes basic Vs, V stars, and V maxes, then your opponent can't take any prizes for it. So that's really good.
Yeah, I mean it's a basic, so that's important because it's not the greatest thing Pokemon ever. It's what single energy attachment. If you've been able to build up damage, you're doing meaningful damage on the attack. Otherwise, you're not doing a lot there. But they're not taking out prizes, so yeah, it's got a place. It's colorless energy, so it doesn't have to be a psychic deck to put it into. So it's people are going to be trying it out in some decks, I think.
Yeah, the thing I'm wondering is it better than Meal Tank? And I think it's just probably no because anything that does Meal Tank it will do more damage sometimes, but then it won't die. You don't need to like keep getting your Meal Tank back. With Jinx, you'll need to like keep getting more Jinx. So I feel like and I believe we have this ability in the format that just came out with Trevenant, but obviously this on a basic is much better. I think it could see play, but I think I'd rather play Miltank in almost every scenario.
Yeah, unless you're just buying a turn to set up your bench for the big attack the following turn, but that's usually not a winning strategy.
Yeah, and I'd probably rather hide behind maybe something like Diancie so I can't get bossed or something. It depends on
Yeah.
what I'm playing, but um, it's it's not. I think it's okay. I think it might be like low B. It's honestly not a bad card, but when compared to Miltank, it's horrible. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably falls down to C, but it's a card that's going to get tried out for sure.
yeah, I think it's looking at what we have in C here. They're all pretty like memey attackers that probably won't really see much competitive play, and won't be very consistent. I think Jinx is okay. It's not a particularly good card, but I think it's almost viable. That's what I say.
Okay.
Um, but it's borderline between the two. Now we'll take a look at Warlord. Known for its big health, and it does not disappoint here. Of course, a stage 1 water Pokemon, and it has 200 health, which is massive. And it has an ability called Oversized that says this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from your opponent's attacks, which is just insane. So you got so much health there. And then your attack for 3 water and a colorless energy. Um, 120 damage, so not great, but it's called Special Wave, so unsurprisingly, if it has any special energy attached to it, it does 120 more, so 240 for water. It's a lot, but the big thing is the health here, so.
Yeah, I mean it's so tempting, and trying to think quickly how one could actually make it work. I mean, 200 HP on a single prize, the potential to do, and you take 30 less damage, so it's even more. And the potential to do 240 damage yourself, that's huge. I just don't know how you're going to get it set up with all that energy on it to make it useful. I mean, the one thing that comes to mind is I'm using something like Arceus and Thornton to accelerate to a V and then Thorntoning to the basic to then evolving. But is that really gonna all that worth? Is that good enough payoff for it when I could just then go with just say another V instead of the Sway
Yeah.
Lord?
I know you're a fan of Arceus Thornton. I am too because I made a video on it and played the deck. But I don't think Arceus Thornton is the way here. I think the way is probably Frostmoth, or it could be
Mm,
Palkia. You could use Palkia. Obviously, only one time using Palkia. So, if you just die right after you attack the first time, you're just lost pretty much. But I think
yeah.
with Frostmoth, that's probably the better way to play it. Like Arceus Thornton, I guess, is a better deck because you have like Arceus, but you don't need like tank upon tank, which they both kind of provide. So I'd say Frostmoth is probably the way to play this, but honestly,
Yeah,
I don't know where to put this card.
yeah, and then Frostmont's always tempting, but I find it, you got so many pieces. You got to got them all different Pokemon to play. You got to get the energy. Um, is Whaler? Is it just a silly meme card? I don't know. Maybe it's a C.
Yeah, like where like honestly, I'd say it's low C. I'd say it's the bottom of
Yeah,
C.
probably because it's something people are going to try. I don't think it's going to be successful.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, and the fact that you need special energy too on top of all this water is kind of crazy. Like I don't know what special energy, maybe capture or something to help give you a bit more consistency, but like, or you could do maybe
Powerful.
powerful colorless. No,
Yeah.
no, it's a water Pokemon, so it
Okay.
doesn't. Wait, why do you? Oh, if you're doing
Well,
Arceus, then
powerful. Yeah, I mean you have to have your three waters. You throw a powerful on it, right? Now you're at helps with the damage.
no. Well, then no, that's powerful colorless, so it only helps colorless Pokemon.
Oh, it only colors. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Yep.
But there are something like
You got
Lucky.
wash energy.
Yeah, you have Wash Energy, which is okay. It stops stuff like Sableye
Mm.
and I can't think of anything else, but it's
Right.
okay. What?
Yes. I'm stopping Sableye these days is useful. So wash energy is certainly a consideration, or capture obviously to help draw and
Yeah,
set up.
I kind of like the idea of Lucky Energy as well, because
Mm.
you ideally you'll be getting hit into a bunch of times and surviving it,
Yep.
so you could draw some cards there. You'll probably only get hit twice. You'll get hit once, hopefully not die, and then probably die the next turn. But uh, drawing two extra cards is nice, but this card's kind of bad. So yeah.
Y- Yep.
Now we'll look at I guess Meowstick, which is a stage one psychic Pokemon that is not an attacker. You shouldn't use it anyway. That way it's AD for three, but that's not very good. But it has an interesting ability here called Love. No, Inviting Ear. When you play this Pokemon to evolve one of your Pokemon, you must search your deck for two supporter cards and then put them into your hand, which is interesting. But you can't play two supporters in one turn, so it's not necessarily great.
Right. So in a sense, it's a single prize Luminion on an evolution card. Because yes, you're getting two, but like you said, you can only play one that turn. You may get Marnied or something before you can play the second one. So getting the one supporter is really the most important.
Yeah.
Um, but it's an evolution card. I don't see it probably getting a lot of use.
Yeah, and it's an on playability as well. I might rather have something like Altaria with consistent supporter search. One thing I could see it being used in is a deck like a Leon Zardar, the new Delphox Braixen deck, so you can search out the supporters that you need to get in like the discard or whatever.
Mhm.
And then there is a use for searching out too. So I think it
Right.
might see a little bit of play in those decks, but probably not anything else. I'd say this is probably it might be F tier.
Yeah, it's not going to get a lot of consideration even.
Yeah. I'd say maybe top of F. It's not the worst, but it's
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
drawing a support is always good. So it's yeah,
Hmm.
high F is probably fair.
Yeah. Oh, I just realized there's some cards that aren't on this list. Spoilers, they're bad. As I said, the bad cards aren't on this list. that I'll just mention for a second, because we're talking about supporters. Actually, they might not be in the next set. I don't really know, but there's some Pokemon that they're like bad, but then they're a bit better if you don't have supporters in your discard pile. Spoilers, we've had that in the past, and it's not very good because then your deck doesn't set up ever. So yeah, just wanted to point that out if you're wondering whether I think it's Stonejourner, and there's some other Pokemon, but they're not in this list. As I said, I don't remember if they're in the next set or not. Um, but yeah, so there's some other like Mimi attackers. They probably won't be in here now because there's so many other like silly attackers. But um, yeah, that's something to keep in mind. But now we have, I guess I'll take a look at Klinklang here, which is a Metal Stage 2 with a really interesting ability. I believe it's an on-play ability that says when you evolve it, you search your deck for three basic energy and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like, and then you obviously shuffle your deck. I believe that it can be if you rare candy it, so that's decent. There's a lot of Pokemon like this where you can't rare candy them, or there's some are anyway, but you can use rare candy here. And this kind of reminds me of stuff like Blastoise, the one from from Pokemon Go, but it doesn't end your turn, doesn't charge as much energy. But I think this is a solid card here.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Three energy of any type you want, so you could play whatever type. You can have mixed type deck. Certainly, and with Dragon Pokemon on the rise, which have all sorts of different complex energy costs, it certainly gives an option for that because you can pay whatever type of cost you need for a deck. It's a card that's definitely that could have a place in some decks, I think.
Yeah, I think it's not like a it's a very awkward card, or not very awkward, but an awkward card to set up. It's a stage 2, and
Yeah.
it's not like it doesn't really pull its own weight in the fact that like if you just get the stage 2, it's kind of useless. You could attack it's like 130 for 3, and obviously it's payable because you can extract the energy, but I don't know exactly how useful this is. I'd say you'd probably play it in decks, maybe with Hisuian Gudra V Star. I think it actually could be quite good because the real issue with that deck is getting the energy in play. And now you don't need to use Lost Zone stuff or Arceus, and those are sometimes very awkward to use. So I think this could be. I'm tempted to put this in the B tier, honestly.
Yeah, certainly with Gudra, which I enjoy playing some, getting a Gudra in play in a small bench is not a bad thing, and this is a way to accelerate the energy without getting a lot of Pokemon going set up. So is this really a B? Is it's just going to be is it just be something that you try and it's not going to work, which is certainly a risk with this card as a
Yeah.
stage two, but
I think it has a lot of power behind it, which is very nice. It doesn't do it doesn't have consistency behind it, but I think the power might be enough that if people want it to work. I think they can get it to work.
yeah, it gives you another alternate of how to power up your Pokemon, which is always something you're trying to solve. So putting it in B tier is probably a good play.
Yeah, I don't think it'll end up in B tier. I think it'll end up in either higher or not seeing any play at all. But I think putting in there now for now is fine. Now we'll talk about, I guess, Rapidash, which is an interesting card here. And now, honestly, I started with a lot of the worst cards except for the trainers. But this one is really interesting. This card's not amazing, but it's a stage 1 fire Pokemon, and it has an ability that might be familiar to some of you. It's called Heat Boost, which I'm pretty sure is not the name of the ability this is essentially the same as. But you once on your turn, although you can use this for each individual Rapidash, you may discard a fire energy from your hand, and if you do, this turn, your fire Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. And if you're like thinking, what is this the same as? It's the same as Volcanion EX from Steam Siege, I think. So that was a basic, but this is a stage 1 single prizer. Isn't too bad, although admittedly fire isn't great right now.
Right, like you said, the ability is very, very nice, and it's stage one, but it's single prize, so it's reasonable. But fire's not good for twofold. One, fire Pokemon haven't been great, and water's been very strong. Although the meta's I think getting a little more diverse, so water isn't as dominant as it was a little while ago. I think it'll have a place, but there has to be some fire decks that are strong to make it useful.
Yeah, I think it could be. Obviously, we looked at like Delphox and Braixen and Incineroar, and there are also decks like Leonzard, Entei, which is a deck you like, with the Baby Moltres and Radiant Charizard. And these are all decent Pokemon, and I think it could be a push that one of these decks needs to go all the way. Also, getting Fire Energy in the discard is nice with Magma Basin. So, where do you think this card should go? You play a bunch of fire decks.
Yeah, as I'm reading through, I can stack this too? Is that correct?
Yes, you can stack this. So, um, yeah, and you could
So
even
that's big. So
yeah
I can get 60 or 90 damage if I build up my bench. Certainly getting two down for 60, that's a big push. That pushes things to one-shot territory potentially. Maybe Entei can become viable again or something. I'm not sure. Um, wow, that's a tough. I probably might say it's a B. It just depends whether there's the fire Pokemon to put it with. If there are, it potentially is very good.
yeah. Where would you say this is in like B?
Towards the low end, because there's still the possibility if there aren't the right fire attackers, which I'm not sure there are, it's just not going to see play.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's very tempting, and especially within like the whole time it's in rotation, which admittedly in standard, which admittedly is cut short a little bit because it's coming at the end of a block, but we'll still have it for like 2 years, so it's not too bad. And with Radiant Charizard as well, I think if you're just playing
Right.
one Radiant Charizard in like say Lost Zone decks, this is pretty bad because you don't really want to use this. But if you're doing like a Radiant Charizard plus maybe Inteleon, you could use this at Pokemon, and it's not great, but it's decent. I think it might see a little bit of play, and Radiant Charizard comes up a little short. It just does
Mhm.
250. Um, so you can Choice Bell, which does 280, which is enough sometimes, but not all the time. But then you can Rapidash and do 310, which is almost always enough. So I think Rapidash putting in Bs, it's quite solid.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying it. And Magna Basin is a very strong stadium, just hasn't had the right partners yet. So Fire's getting more pieces with this, so it'll be very interesting.
Yeah. Now I'll move on to I guess I'll talk about Dragonite now, which is a bit of an interesting card. It's not actually that interesting, but it's one of the two dragon Pokemon in this set, or dragon lines, I think. There might be some others, but it's decent. Um, Notably, for its second attack, I'll talk about its first attack called Dragon Claw. Obviously, very generic name. No weakness, 160 health, so decent stats. It does 80 for three colors, pretty bad. But then it does for water, lightning, colorless, quite expensive, but not unpayable either. It does 180. When you search your deck for three basic energy and attach them to your Pokemon any way you like, then shuffle your deck. So you stream the attacks. Essentially, once you get one up.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like a single prize Arceus in a sense, right? Because it accelerates three basic energy again. Now you're not limited to V Pokemon, which makes sense since this is not a V. It's obviously a stage two, not the stage one. It needs one more energy and of water and lightning, which isn't great. And it's stage two, but it's kind of has an Arceus feel in a single prize budget setting, I guess, is how it strikes me.
Yeah. Oh, and also a bit of a spoiler for um, one of the other cards here, but this will be good in one of these other decks here. So and we'll get to that when we get there. But this is I think by itself it's awkward to set up. I'm not exact. Honestly, I don't really know where I'd put this one either. Maybe C or B. I think B because it can be used to power up anything. Um, and its attack 180 is quite solid in terms of damage. So I think it's okay certainly.
Yeah, I mean the hard four energy of in two different types is it's that's obviously tough. So it's gonna get tried out and may find that it helps set up some other Pokemon too and is worth the work on it. So B's reasonable.
Yeah, I think it's honestly mid B. It's not like the the B cards are kind of weird. Most of these will move below or above B once they get come out. Probably a few will go into A or maybe even S. Probably not S, but and then a bunch will drop down to like C and F. But it's a good card. I'll get to why it's better and later, as I said. But now I'll talk about Archeops, I guess. Colorless Stage 2. I believe it evolves from a fossil as well. So not super easy to get into play. But this has an insane ability that says called Primal Turbo. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 2 special energy cards. They can be the same special energy and attach them to one of your Pokemon. So you can attach it to itself to use its attack, which is 120 for 3. Obviously, that's not too good, but you can use it to power up anything, really. It can be Aurora energy, so you can go into an interesting toolbox style deck, or it can be something like I don't know. It can be anything.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I assume it can stack again because
Yeah,
it doesn't. It's just this Pokemon. So I've kind of getting multiple stage twos isn't easy, but
especially
um,
fossils.
yeah, it's not simple. But accelerating special energy is huge. Um, Blissey obviously is a way, especially to get it going quickly. I don't know that the deck has the space for that. That's going to be the issue. The deck space to
Mhm.
fossil, rare candy, Archeops. How
Mhm.
often can you do it? But accelerating two special energy is big.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to tell you, this is another fossil, obviously. So there's the Pokemon that helps get fossils into play, and there's also a Pokemon that's really good here, that gets colorless Pokemon into play. So, I think you should. We're going to get to that, and when we get to like the V's and V stars, but and V maxes, but it's not that hard to get into play. It's like it's 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 not easy to get into play, but you will be able to play it with the Blissey without an absurd amount of clunk, um, even though it appears that it's like really clunky.
Okay. Yeah, it's more a matter of how many deck slots. That's my concern. But that ability is huge. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things that would really like this to pair with also. So I mean, I think it's got to be at least a B.
I think
What
it's
do you
I
think?
think this is an A, honestly. It's because it's not super hard to get into play. As I said, I'll get to that again later. Because there's some interesting combos of cards that are clearly made to go together, but it's not impossibly hard, and it's just such a good ability, and it can be used multiple times in multiple Archeops. There's the issue that you really just only play special energy then because you're gonna lose the special energy, and obviously you can't get it back really. But I think this is an A tier card.
I think that's fair. And I'm just thinking with this card out there, the meta special energies will be on the rise. So then, you know, got to think about Beedrill, Duraludon, those things
Um,
as, as
yeah,
as as plays. If this Pokemon becomes significant, but yeah, A tier seems like it's right.
yeah. Now we got what I think is, arguably is the best line or single prize non-rule box Pokemon here, and that is the Gardevoir line. This I've been looking forward to quite a bit, although admittedly it's nothing new. I guess I'll talk about the Gardevoir, which is mediocre. It has an underwhelming attack, an okay attack 120 for 2. Then it has a really good ability called a Refinement that says you must discard a card from your hand in order to use this, and then you draw 2 cards. It says once during your turn, but you can use it for each one, which isn't great in a stage 2, but it's actually the same ability on the stage 1. So it's Refinement, and you just discard 1, draw 2, and it's also level ball searchable.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking it's a worse Cinccino, but you have the stage one also that does the same ability. You to protect it on the bench though, you might want to have a Gardevoir to evolve to, I guess. So you're out of a territory of getting one shot by things.
Yeah.
Um, it, Obviously, with rotation. Some key engine cards are being lost in China, which this can replace. Obviously, Teleon lines being lost for the search ones,
Yeah,
so
we still
that's
yeah, that's not great, but we still have Lipard. And
mhm.
one other thing that I think is very important to mention, not in this set, but there have been Gardevoir. There's a previous Gardevoir as well as the previous Gallade, which also evolves from Curlia. The Gardevoir is very good. It says pretty much you draw two cards, except if either any of those cards were, I believe, basic energy, you attach them to your Pokemon. So that's great. No discarding now, and it's also accelerates energy, possibly. But then the Gallade as well, amazing. Once in your turn, you can search your deck for a supporter card and put it into your hand, which is really good. So I think that's really important to keep in mind as well with this engine.
Yeah. So it's this is a good card. It's going to see play. How wide, it's another, it's an option that's going to get considered for a lot of decks.
Yeah, I think this will become the best engine in format um, when it comes out. Maybe not immediately, but I think there will be times when this is the best engine in format. It's the stage one obviously is good. It's the same as Zoroark GX, which was very good, and Chinchino and Napoleon
Mhm.
and Lipard, which are all nice Pokemon. But then the fact that you have these amazing stage twos to evolve into, I think makes it really good. It's like you can evolve into these stage twos that are so strong, and the fact they were just awkward before because of their stage twos, but the fact that the stage one is so good on its own, I think these. Honestly, I'm tempted to put these in S tier. Not the Gardevoir. I think the Gardevoir is bad, but the Curlier, I'm tempted to put into S tier.
Maybe if with those other cards really pulling it up. Otherwise, an eight A tier is certainly appropriate.
Yeah,
If
I
not,
think you need to look at it with the other cards though, and they're gonna be in format together for quite a while as well.
okay. So yeah, can get
Um,
our second card up in S tier if you want.
yeah, Gardevoir. Should I put this in like C tier or something? Maybe B. Probably C, right?
Probably C. You don't you're probably not going to want it in the deck. I don't think.
Yeah, it's kind of bad in comparison to Curly. On its own, it's okay, I guess. Now we got the Radiance here. Let's start off with Radiant Serena, Grass Radiant Pokemon. I believe our second Grass Radiant Pokemon that we'll see. It's a 140 health, so that's pretty standard, but good health. It does an attack that's 90 for grass colors. You recover from special conditions, so that's not great. But then you have an interesting ability here called Elegant Treatment. Once during a turn, you may heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon, and you can also use Scoop Up Net with this if you want.
Yeah, so that healing 20 is a nice ability. Um, Now it's your radiant Pokemon, so it means you don't play any other radiant Pokemon. That's always a downside. Um, is it better than the other radiant Pokemon? But for decks that want to be tanky, healing 20 per turn or more if you scoop up net is going to be a nice option.
Yeah. One thing that I think you need to compare it to though is Radiant Gardevoir, which does reduces the damage you take, I believe, from Pokemon
Mhm.
V by 20, and in a sense that gives you more health because you can. It's going like essentially the damage is reduced before they attack as opposed to after they attack, but it is only from Pokemon V, and it's only I think it might be all your Pokemon though.
Yeah, so but it's a good card and it's going to be tried out in some decks and probably will find a spot in some tanky healing type decks.
Yeah.
Uh, so I don't know. Maybe it might be the C tier.
Yeah, I think it might be top of C. Um,
Yeah, it's a solid C, a
yeah,
solid card.
yeah. I think it's one of the it's one of the it's an okay Radiant. It's not like there have been some Radiant Pokemon that are like complete trash, and some that are like absolutely insane. And it's neither of those. It's fine. Um, it's cool to see more Radiant Pokemon. Admittedly, this isn't too different from Radiant Gardevoir, which is a bit disappointing, but it's still a fun Pokemon to play. Also, it could see play in a Celebi VMAX, so that's interesting, which is another healing grass. So maybe the grass stuff's coming together. But now we're going to move on to Radiant Alakazam. It looks like they're still avoiding Kadabra, unfortunately. The situation with Yuri Geller was supposedly resolved, but maybe not. But it has an interesting attack, only 130 health, relatively low for a Radiant, but it's fine, same as like I think Radiant Greninja. And the attack Mind Ruler, Psychic Colorless, and it does 20 for each card in your opponent's hand. So obviously, some decks get really big hands, notably Lost Zone decks, so that could be good. And then it has an ability called Spoon of Pain. Once during your turn, you may move up to 2 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another of their Pokemon. So, I think this is like some other card that had a similar effect, but I honestly don't remember what it was. But this is interesting.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that just flashed through my mind too, the attack, because the attack's not great. 20 times the cards. Usually their hand size is not going to be good enough, but like an expanded with Gengar or Mimikyu or something, trying to build them up and then switch into this. But for standard now, it's really the ability. Again, as we try to set things up to knock them out, it's going to have a place in decks, and certainly the Pokemon that if it does 30 damage and you get 2 extra prizes, ways to try to make that work if that's what you're going to strive for too.
Yeah, I think it could also be good in maybe it will find a spot in uh what's the colorless deck Hisuian Zorak V-Star, because
Mhm.
you're gonna play down the what's the stadium called? The Gape Job
Oh,
Bog.
yeah.
So you can play that down, and they're gonna take damage counters, and then not necessarily a ton, but you play four, and it might stick, and they might take some. Then you can move that around, and that gives you some nice room to play with. And do you think that I haven't played that deck, but you've played it? And how do you think that could
I've
see?
some. It might. I'm also thinking if or maybe some other decks you throw that stadium in, you have this the Spoon of Pain to move around, and then a little bit of pinging with goons or Inteleons, and you can knock out the small Pokemon, which can take out the engine in some cases too.
Yeah, I like the idea of it. You can kind of, there are a lot of times, pretty much every deck, like every game, when you attack, you're gonna do more than you need to. So you can just get extra damage like from time to time,
Right.
and it's pretty good, honestly. Like now I'm comparing it to Radiant Halucha, which is 30 more belonging to V Maxes, and that's not great. You always have this. It's not very. There aren't a ton of V Maxes, but it's really good. In the fact that the Radiant Alakazam can now do debatably 20 more damage to any Pokemon. Obviously, you need to get the damage from somewhere, but your opponent will often have damage in play, so it's not crazy that this will be useful a bunch of times in the game.
It's definitely going to be useful. The question, which is this the reading you're going to want over like Greninja or Charizard or something? But for some decks, it may be. So I think it's pretty interesting. You probably at this point, I think it's too late in the evolution to like play Sable IV, but this would work in a deck like that or Jolteon VMAX if people want to have a go with those decks too.
Yeah, so I think this is. I think it's B or A. I'm not. Where do you think it'll go? Where it should go?
Uh, that's a good question. I I think to be safe, I'd put it in B. It could rise up to be an A, but I'm not sure that it will.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I guess I'll put it like near the top of B. I think it's a solid Radiant. I think it's another one of those like mid-level Radiants, but I think it's better than Serena, I guess. So I think it'll see some play at least. And then we have the third Radiant, which admittedly I think this is probably the weakest Radiant, Jirachi, with only 90 health. Unsurprising because Jirachi usually has low health, but it has an interesting. Well, it has an attack here that's flip 2 coins. If both of them are heads, your opponent's instantly KO'd, which is funny. It's not great, but it's okay for two colorless. It could be worse. Um, and then if this Pokemon is in the actual spot with this ability Entrusted Wishes and is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, pretty much, which is probably most of the time, search your deck for up to 3 cards and put them into your hand, and then shuffle your deck.
Yeah, okay, so if it's knocked out, I was thinking about the attack too. Sorry, when you were reading that. So because I
Yeah,
was thinking the attack is if you're playing it, you're going to use the attack sometimes as a desperation move, right? This
yeah,
could what the point is the odds aren't great for you. What 25% of the time you'll get
yeah,
it, but if you wait, it may win you the game too. So if it's like win the game or lose, you go with this and see what happens. But if it's knocked out, search for 3 cards. That's really nice, and it's at the end of your turn, so you're not getting Marnied or anything like that. So
or the end
that's
of their turn.
at the end of your opponent's attacking turn,
Yeah.
right?
Uh huh.
Right. You're knocked out. You draw three. You search for 3 cards, and then you draw for turn to start your turn afterwards, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So these 3 cards you're getting, your opponent can't play a Marnie because their turn's done.
Yeah. They obviously can gust around it though, but um, you can keep sending it up. But if they keep gusting around it, by the time this is, excuse me, this is. You talk for a second.
Yeah. So yeah, it's well in a sense you could play this instead of Diancie or something. I mean, obviously you can get bossed, but which isn't great. But your opponent's not necessarily going to want to, every time they use a resource, they don't have it for later. So if they have to use a boss to avoid it, you send it up again the next turn if that works for you. And eventually they're not going to have the boss. So searching for the 3 cards then is very good. And to give up 1 prize for any 3 cards you want in your deck, you're going to usually take the 3 cards in your deck. But it is limited though of its gameplay, and the attack isn't great. I mean, I guess if you have Glimwood Tangle, you hit it about a third of the time probably.
Yeah. I think it's closer to 50. Sorry about that. That I did not expect that. But yeah, so it's useful. Obviously, like one of the big issues is if like they keep gusting you up, you might set up by like the they might have taken prizes by the time that you can set up. So that's awkward.
Yeah, it probably doesn't get played much. I mean, you probably want to have a single prize thing of, throw up your Snorlax and Gormandize or something is probably going to end up being better most of the time for you. So, or Diancie if you really just don't want to get something else knocked out.
I mean, Jirachi's like, well, I mean, comparing it to Gormanize though, like seeing any 3 cards is way better than searching for 3 specific ones. I mean, sorry, seeing
Yeah,
any
searching
three
for
is
3 cards is much better than just seeing a few random cards. The question is, you're forcing your opponent really to gust to boss you up, to gust around this card because your opponent doesn't want to hit into it. So how disruptive are you going to be by making your opponent gust around it? But the problem is you haven't done any damage. So unless you're doing something that's a hit and run deck, which hasn't been really strong in the past
yeah.
recently, I
There's
don't know
there's
it
a
has
hit
a
and run
place
attack in this
in the set.
expansion, but
Okay.
it's not great. But yeah, I think one thing though is in control decks. Then you compare it to a Radiant Pokemon. That's probably the least thought about Radiant Pokemon. Radiant Eevee, which has an attack that I don't remember the name of, but for one colorless, obviously a basic Pokemon, for each different type of Pokemon you have in play, and this has seen play in control decks, is you search your deck for a card, and obviously that's on your turn. It can get Marnied away, but it's really good because you can use it over and over, and ideally you get your opponent locked down. So Jirachi won't necessarily be helping a lot, versus Eevee is just so much stronger because you can do it every turn.
Yeah, so I don't think would be inclined to give this too high of a ranking. So
Yeah,
I don't, is it C? Is it F? It might be better than
it's
F.
better than F. I think it's okay. I don't think it's not great because you're just sacrificing it, but it's not. I think it's solidly in C. It's not. It's like mid C. I think it's not great, but it's not the worst. Um, But
It's going to take the right type of deck to make it useful.
yeah, but I think in the right type of deck, it could be amazing. So that's kind of my thought process. Also, if you have an ability that like ends your turn, leave me in the active is pretty nice as well.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Also, yeah.
Um, okay, so that's all the single prizes, though. Obviously, there was quite a lot. This set has a ton of weird single prizes, and we had the Radiance as well. But now we'll move on to the Pokemon Vs. There's some V stars and V maxes. So I'll start off with Reshiram V, I think. And this one's pretty generic. It has an attack, Gleaming Wings, that just says search your deck. It's one fire and it has 220 health. So that's fine. Fire type, obviously not great type, but search for two basic energy and attach them to one of your Pokemon in play, and then shuffle your deck. So that's fine. It's kind of like Bolt on V, which was good, but it wasn't always like amazing. And then we have its attack White Blast that does 200 for Fire colorless. Flip a coin if tails. This Pokemon can't attack during your next turn, which it's not that bad. But and obviously it has access to all the fire tools like Magma Basin and the new Rapidash.
Yeah. So within the fire realm, is this going to be viable with Rapidash, Magna Basin? I guess Entei is the other. You have the Charizard, the Charizard to attack with also.
Which the Radiant Charizard.
Yeah.
Um, so this is yeah, and it obviously does less damage, and I feel like it's usually going to do less damage than or it will quite often do less damage than Entei, and Entei has a good ability, and a cheaper attack. Reshiram's attack, its first attack is okay, but it's not like an amazing attack that you want to be using too often. So I think this Pokemon's not very good.
Yeah, as you bring Entei V, that's really the one to compare it to, and Entei is probably going to be better in general.
Yeah, so I'd say this is probably like bottom of C. It's not complete trash, but it's not great.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's fair.
Um, Now we'll move on to the Pokemon I was talking about earlier a bit, Omastar V, and this is the bad one I was talking about earlier. It's attack Ancient Guidance. Search your deck for up to two Pokemon that evolve from item cards with Fossil in their name. So those evolve from, I believe, Rare Fossil and Unidentified Fossil. The Rare Fossil ones are the four weird ones that are mixed and matched. The like Arctozolt and Dracovish and stuff, and then you have the unidentified fossil, which are pretty much all the rest. They're I think all grouped together. So we got the Anorith, the Archeops, obviously the stage ones of those, and so you can get those into play for one colorless on a basic V, which is okay, I guess. Obviously they can just be Gust KO'd after, and then we have the attack Tentacle Defense. For colorless, does 110, and during the your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon, if it's an evolution, it cannot attack, but obviously they can switch out.
Yeah, the Ancient Guidance, it only does the one that directly evolves from the fossil, not a stage two. Is
Yeah,
that
so
correct?
yeah, to the stage one.
So
Yes.
yeah, so that makes it of limited value, I think. And then the other attack, 110 for three, that's not great. I just don't think so. Obviously the stopping your opponent from attacking the next turn, but most people can will get around that.
Yeah, it's okay. It'll certainly stop him attacking some. Um, it's like it's good against like I'm trying to think like obviously against Giratina V Star and like sometimes like Lost Zone V Star decks, they're gonna have a ton of switch, so they're just gonna get out of that. And then a deck like Arceus, they're probably just gonna Sharon's Care, and they can retreat without too much of an issue either. Theoretically, hitting into a Palkia could stop them, but it's not that great because they don't mind it retreating too much either because they have a lot of energy acceleration and recovery. And then yeah, most of the other V stars aren't great. I guess you got Zoroark, Hisuian Zoroark V star. Um, but like they can all retreat, right? So you'd rather just KO them. and I think it's not great.
Yeah, I don't see this as being a card that gets used a lot in the game. So I don't know. It can't be better than C tier to me. I don't even know if it falls to F. That's just a card that really doesn't see any use.
Yeah, I think this is no, I think this is an F tier card. I think no, I'll say bottom of C. It's the attack that puts the fossil in play could theoretically be useful if you want to do some like weird, crazy fossil deck. Um, there's the Draco's ult, I think, that like when they evolve some rare fossil and then they put damage on them. I don't know all the fossil Pokemon, but there's like the new Archeops and it could help get that into play. So I think it's okay. Attacking with a V that has low HP that just gonna get knocked out next turn and doesn't do any damage is kind of bad, but theoretically it could be okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the fossils and handle that, and then you do have those new tools that it is a V. You could, if it's survived, you could use those. But you know,
Yeah, I mean it doesn't even need to survive. Like with the you're talking about the ones with the that give it the V star power, right?
yeah,
Yeah, you could use Force Seal Stone, turn one going first, so or even going second. So you don't need to attack with it first. You could just do that right off the
right.
bat. But they're not like so great that they're just gonna like win you the game. You'd probably rather put them on something else. So I say this is pretty bad.
Yep.
Let's see. Now we got this. What's this Pokemon called? Is it Ursulana? It's one of the new like Pokemon from the Hisui region. Yeah, Ursaluna V with 230 health on a fighting Pokemon. By the way, you might notice it has a little like thing on it. That means it came out differently in Japan. So I'm not sure if this card's actually going to be in the set, but apparently it will be. I'm not really sure. It'll come out at some point though. And it has an interesting ability, I guess is the main thing going for it. That's it takes 30 less damage from attacks. It's fighting type, so you can add in the stone fighting, and then it has an interesting attack here, Pete Shoulder. This attack does 10 less for each damage counter on it, but it does 220. So, and with the damage reduction, obviously that's quite nice.
Right. Now, if you add like the stone fighting with to increase the HP, you still have the damage, so it hurts
Stone
the.
fighting, I believe, reduces damage.
Oh, that's the okay. That's right. It's the fire. Yeah, it's the fire one that increases HP. Right. So, but three fighting energies, a high cost to pay. It'd be nice if some of it was colorless.
Yeah, there's
Um,
Gutsy Pickaxe. Does Gutsy Pickaxe accelerate? I believe it's only basic energy, right?
I think so.
Is that only onto the bench, or can that accelerate to the active? I
I
think.
don't remember right now.
Okay, but it's okay. Um, you could theoretically Thornton it. You could do Glare and Zapdos from Evolving Skies. Accelerate the energy when you play it down, attach, and then go in. And the damage it does when it has full HP it's pretty respectable, and it shouldn't be getting one-shotted. So I think it's okay. The big issue is if you get hit and you don't get one-shotted, you're not really like doing much. But I think it's okay. I don't think you'll see much competitive play though.
No, because like I'm thinking if I was going to play it, I'd probably put in an Arceus deck because then I can accelerate to it. But then you know what? I'd just rather accelerate to another Arceus and attack with Arceus, which does almost as much damage, and just simpler than this. I think I don't have to worry about the damage reduction and all that.
Yeah, yeah. I say
Um,
it's not as bad as some of the other V's, but I say it's probably like mid C maybe.
yeah, I think that's fair.
Um, and then let's see. Now we'll look at where is it? Magirna V, a Metal Pokemon V, which is a an interesting card here. It's pretty generic, but it has 210 HP, so that's fine, pretty average. First attack, one metal does 30 to any of your opponent's Pokemon, which isn't bad. Snipe is always nice. And then special laser, very common attack. 100 from metal colorless. If you have a special energy on, you do 220, I believe. So that's the same as Necrozma V, and it's similar to some other things, including the Warlord. So yeah, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean the second attack's intriguing. If you have a metal deck, it's metal energy, so something with metal cost um, for 240 for three on a basic. It's not a V star, but just a V. I think it's going to see some play
No,
and
it's
some
wait 220.
220. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, 220. You're right. 100 plus 120. It's not impossible to get. You can accelerate two to it and then get the special energy for the third energy.
Yeah,
I I don't know that it's going to end up being all that useful, but maybe it's a B tier because I think people are going to try it out early on.
yeah. I think there are a few things I don't like about this. One, comparing it to Zacian. So, and it does less than Zacian, has less health. It doesn't have like the really good ability, and Zacian's not even
Yep.
that good right now. Um, Also, it's gonna you'll need to probably metal sauce into it, and we're losing metal sauces soon, and then at that point
Yeah.
we're losing Zacian. So when Zacian rotates, and this could theoretically be step up to take its place, we're losing the way to get energy on it. So honestly, I think this card is in the C tier as well. I think in the C tier, not the B tier, because it's no, I guess C. If metal becomes good, this could see some play, but I'm not overly confident in it.
Yeah, your arguments are fair. It's right now Zacian's better. Um, After post rotation, it's not as good. Can it find a place in the Dialga deck or something? I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I don't think the Dialga deck will survive rotation.
That could be. And the fact that it's two metals in a colorless, I was thinking like Gudra, but with that, if you're usually having to accelerate, like with Lost Zone, two different types of energy, so you can't get it on in one turn. The energy cost.
Well, you can if you attach a metal from your hand, or do you can always do
Well,
two Mirage Gates as well.
yeah, you could do two Mirage Gates because you're gonna have to attach the special energy from your hand.
Oh yes, yes it. Well, yeah. So that could be an Aurora Energy or a
That's true. It
Totem.
could be an Aurora, so then you could do the other right. Oh, so, but is that really going to make these decks better? It probably doesn't.
Yeah, I'd say it's. You could put on bottom of B. I think it's
Okay.
not great, but it's okay. And in cards like this, it's very like safe. It's a card that Pokemon's like, you know what? If metal becomes good, you can have this as a nice tool, but it's not a particularly special Pokemon. I do think the 30 snipe also helps it though. And now we have Ho-Oh V, and you haven't really seen many of these cards before, but I believe you have seen or heard about this one. Um, and for those of you who know Ho-Oh, it's somewhat similar to Ho-Oh EX. This is a colorless Pokemon that has an attack that does called Rainbow Burn. I think this might be the same as the EX attack. Does more probably, but this attack does for four colorless, 100 plus 30 for each type of basic energy attached to this Pokemon. Now you may be thinking, that's silly. You're never going to get that much energy on, and it's not even that much anyway. But it has the amazing ability, which I'm struggling to read, Flames of Rebirth. It's called that. And once during your turn, this Pokemon is in your discard pile. You may put this Pokemon onto your bench and attach up to four basic energy cards from your discard pile to this Pokemon, and they can be the same type or different type, but only basic energies. And if you use this ability, your turn ends. So, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was getting excited till you said then my turn ends because that's not so good at that point. Because I was always concerned, even without my turn ending, I really wanted to get four different energies, which means I have to have a deck with a lot of different energy, which is a little tricky anyway. But then my turn ends. There's a lot of things that can just boss it up and knock it out potentially because I haven't put any pressure on them with an attack. I guess you're
Yeah.
gonna have to have Diancing the active when you do this because otherwise you got to assume the odds are too great that you're not going to get to attack with it.
Yeah. And then there's I believe you talked about this, and I've seen other people, and it's combining it with Thornton, which just I realize we've talked about it, but we haven't said what it does. If you don't know it, switches a basic Pokemon you discard pile with the basic Pokemon you have in play, and you keep all the stuff attached, so you can get four energy on it. Notably, you'd probably do this with something like Dialga V-Star. Get a bunch of metal energy, switch Dialga in, and go and boom, do your big attacks and stuff. And I think I think that's probably how you want to use this because it does so much. it's so much energy. It's really nice. It's kind of like the Blastoise from Pokemon Go that I talked about earlier, except it's a basic, so it's easier to set up. Although it is a V, but it's I think it has potential with Thornton.
Yeah, the concern I have, you're gonna take a few turns in the game before you can do it because you have to get all the energy there too, and probably of different types. Well, I guess it depends on what you're pairing it with, right? Can you get
Yeah.
the energy there quickly enough? You're gonna need Diancie in the active because you don't want it getting bossed up, and you
Hmm.
can't. So, um, and then the other, but by that point, if I've taken a few turns to set it up, my opponent's gotten a few turns. They're getting their resources together. They're more likely to be able to do something to cause me trouble.
Yeah, I
You
think
know?
the idea here is you kind of commit this to something really big that when you set it up, it's just insane. Something like Dialga, maybe one of the amazing rares like Yveltal. But then this brings me to another point of if you're using Yveltal with Thornton, why don't you just use Arceus V-Star, which with Thornton, we are actually having some really amazing pressure early game while still maintaining this great energy acceleration, as well as the ability to use Arceus' V-Star power, which is really good as well.
Yeah, I mean, unless you can figure out a way to pull this ability off turn one, even if you go second, it's not that bad not attacking turn one because you're often not doing big damage. So now you've set up a really powerful turn two. I don't know that that's really going to be viable though.
Yeah, you could certainly do it with probably like two energy in the discard, but that's obviously not as much as you need. So obviously, if you add something like bat, I mean, we do have Professor Burnett, which searches for two cards and discards them, but it's a supporter, so
Mhm.
it's not great. Um, it's not crazy hard to get a ton of cards in the discard. You can use like Pokestop and Research and Tracking Shoes to get all these cards in the discard. It's not absurd that you get three in the discard turn one. I don't think, but
Mm. If you could go first and get like this and three in the end discard like half the time, it would be really good, obviously,
yeah,
because then the ending your turn, even if you get like two energy in the discard, it might be
yeah.
okay.
I think I no, I'm feeling actually better about this because you have the Force Seal Stone, which is the one that you can search for
Mm.
any card with the V Star
Yep.
power. You can use this turn one and quite possibly get cards in the discard you need by searching out the a certain piece, maybe Pokestop or something, just to get you going a bit more. And I think I'm tempted to put this in somewhere between B, maybe even probably not A, but probably B, like high B.
I yeah, this will be interesting to see. It may end up just really falling to not being viable, but it's really interesting to see what it's going to do.
Yeah. The potential is just so strong. But I don't know if
Yep.
it's going to be able to quite pull this weight. Now let's talk about Regieleki V and then Regieleki V Max. It's honestly debatable which of these is better, which is obviously quite unusual, as usually the evolution's much better. But yeah, Regieleki V has a very basic attached switch bolt, 200 health as well, so unsurprisingly relatively low for a V, but 30, and then you switch with one of your bench Pokemon. Pretty standard there. And then you have an attack here called a Lightning Wall that does 100 damage, and for lightning colorless, so kind of expensive. But then during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 100 less from attacks, so it's probably gonna live through the turn with that. And then you also have the VMAX with 310 HP. Again, relatively low for VMAX, but nothing horrible. And then Transistor is its ability. It says your basic lightning Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active, which is three times as good as the Zapdos from Pokemon Go, which honestly isn't that good. But so that's nice. Obviously, can boost your Regieleki V with the VMAX, and then it has an interesting attack called Max Thunder and Lightning, and does 220 for again the Lightning colorless. And then during your next turn, you can't use that attack.
That's interesting. That's wow. It gets such strange ideas. Now I'll just ask the dumb question. I think I know the answer. I can't play this in the Reggie's deck, right? Because it's the
Um,
Regieleki V. Is that
no,
correct?
it's your basic lightning Pokemon do more. Oh, you're saying um
I can't use it in Accelerate, right?
um
It doesn't count towards.
no, it's not a Pokemon with I believe do you have PTCGO open or um
Uh, no, I can
no, no, no.
call.
But I don't know. I believe it's
I
your
don't.
Pokemon has to be named Reggie Alecki. So I don't
Hmm.
believe this will work.
And this is Regieleki V, right? Which is a
Yes.
different name. That's what I was thinking.
Uh-huh.
If it worked with that, that would be really that would be significant. But what? Wow. I kind of. I mean, I like it. It's really intriguing. I kind of think I'm gonna. I would want to play with Memory Capsule, but then I have nightmares because in the past when I played Memory Capsule, it just doesn't work. Or maybe you just want the VMAX on the bench.
Yeah.
Um, does it stack, by the way?
I
That
believe it
question, like, looks like it does based on the
yeah,
wording,
I believe
right?
it does. So it can hit decently. I mean, 100 base isn't a lot with Choice Bell and maybe two V maxes, which is admittedly quite a bit. Um, you're hitting almost 200 damage. You're definitely two-shotting stuff, or even just a V max and one Choice Bell. And you have pretty good survivability. Um, it's not. It's honestly pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, and the two attacks, obviously, whether you want to just attack with the V or you want to attack with the V Max and maybe a memory capsule, do the first attack lightning wall, you take 100 less, then you can definitely finish him off. Max Thunder the following turn. Now you're probably knocked out after that, so are you going to lose the prize trade? You might.
Yeah, I'm thinking about so the energy, it's obviously lightning double colorless. There are a few ways. There's Flaffy to get the
Yeah.
lightning on, but you might want to play speed lightning as well. You could play double turbo energy, but then you're doing even less damage, which isn't great. You also have the new V guard energy to take less damage. You have stuff like
Hmm.
lucky energy when you're because you're ideally being hit into a bunch, so that's really nice. And you also have the regenerative energy when you evolve it, and it could actually be good in this deck. So I
That's
think
true. That one could make sense. You have to get the three energy on, but there because it's a bit tanky. I'm also kind of in my mind comparing it to the Hisui and the Gudra,
hmm
it's which is also tanky. It does 80 less instead of 100, but it does 200 damage, which is a lot better than 100.
yeah.
So is this better or worse than that? I don't know. The other way I'm thinking is, but it also could I use the VMAX to protect just some other Pokemon, Raichu or Raikou deck, and then play maybe a couple of these, two of these on the bench to protect them. I'm not sure
What do you
that
mean to
that gets me.
protect them? No, you
Well,
do more
they take
damage.
less damage. Oh, they do more damage.
Yeah, you
Okay, so
do
it
more,
boosts them. Well, yeah, and again, okay, I'm sorry. So it doesn't
which could
protect them,
still
but
work, definitely. But
right, might get me to the to one shot things that I wouldn't otherwise. It's really interesting. I'm not sure it's gonna pull together though.
yeah, I think it has potential. And Lightning's it's been a mediocre type for quite a while now, since the last rotation, and it'd be nice to see something cool. And I think these are solid B tier cards. Like they're very decent.
Yeah, I think B tier's fair. It's the type of thing that could easily drop in the sense that it just doesn't really get any traction.
Yeah.
But it's very appealing, and I think a B's a fair place to
Yeah, and
put it
I'll
today.
group them together. Even though I'd say the V is, I guess, better than the V Max. It's not a you're playing both.
You're gonna have both in the deck. I'm not sure what the count will be that, but you're gonna play them both.
Yeah. Now let's look at I guess Superior V Star. A Grass V Star with 270 health, so quite solid. Pretty average, but that's nice. And it has a few interesting attacks here. And the V, by the way, isn't very useful on this. I think it's very generic. And although the V can heal your opponent's Pokemon if you want to do that. But you probably don't. So you have the attack on the V Star, though, Regal Blender, that does 190 for grass and two colorless, and then you may move any energy from your Pokemon to your other Pokemon, so you just move them around, which is interesting if you want to use it with something like Cheryl or something. Um, and then you have Star Winder, I think. Um,
Yep.
60 for each. It's only one grass, but does 60 for each energy attached to this Pokemon, and then you switch it with one of your bench Pokemon. So that's a decent attack. It's not an amazing attack, but it's a it's interesting with the hit and run aspect as well.
Yeah, I mean it's only one. You can do it for one energy, but then it just does 60 damage, right? Which isn't
Yeah.
great, but you get it out of the way. Um, the thing is, for like you probably if you only get three energy on, you're probably better with the first attack, unless you really want to retreat. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure how useful that V Star power is. This one, if you played it, you actually might want to use the tool to search for a card.
Yeah. Probably.
Um, because it's not a great V-Star power. Grass hasn't been that good, and they have Gardenia's Vigor, which it just has so much promise. So
Hmm.
maybe that this would be a way to get the energy up in a single turn for it.
Yeah, and you have so much energy to play with now, and now you can just put it wherever you want. It's honestly tempting. You could play this. You'd probably play it with some other grass like V Star or V Max.
Hmm.
And there are some really good, there's some quite solid, anyways, V's, V Maxes and V Stars. There's Sunilligan, there's Leafeon, there's Shaman, there's the other Leafeon, there's Celebi, and there's Orbital, and they're all quite solid. Not quite top tier. I guess Leafeon V Max was top tier for a little while, but they're all just outside of that range, I'd say. And I think Serperior, honestly, I think Serperior is going to join them and one of those almost good enough grass Pokemon.
Probably is. And I'm also thinking we have the Radiant Jirachi, so you use the hit and run attack, send up the Radiant Jirachi, which is nice, but you can only do it once in the game, so it probably isn't enough to make that your Radiant Pokemon. But it's an interesting little thought there.
Yeah, yeah. So where do you put this? I might put this in C tier.
Yeah, I think it's in C tier. It's going to get tried out and probably just join the stack of grass Pokemon that aren't quite good enough.
It's not bad though. I think it at one point one day one of these Pokemon are going to be good, but not just yet. Um, Now we have Unknown V and Unknown V Star, Psychic Pokemon. And by the way, so there's one weird thing. If you don't know how Unknown works, it's unknown and then some letter. So there's a Pokemon, I think Unknown G, which was good. And it's unknown and it had an ability called Guard, and it like you took less damage and stuff, which was kind of cool. But so there's a Pokemon, I think there's a Pokemon called Unknown V out there. There's a single parts Pokemon, but it's called Unknown V. So the Unknown V Star might actually be able to evolve from Unknown V. Um, and yeah, the art's actually really cool on these. The Unknown, if you don't know, make up all the different letters of like the alphabet and some other stuff. And so the and it's always the letter of that unknown. So this Unknown V is the letter V, and the V Star has a V STAR. So that's kind of cool. I really love the art on these. But then the attacks are interesting as well. Really low HP though. Unknown with V with 180, which is pretty horrible. I mean, it's not the worst, but for an attacker, it's bad. Has 30, and it does confusion for one psychic, which is whatever. And then you have the attack victory symbol. If you have only one prize left and you use this attack, you win, which is kind of funny. And then you have the V Star with some interesting stuff. 250 health. Again, very low, much lower than you'd like. It's not horrible, but like compared to like 280, it's not great. You have Tri Power for one psychic. Flip 3 coins. This does 70 times the number of heads. And then we have Star Cipher, the V Star power. It's an attack here that reads until this Pokemon leaves play. It gains an ability that has the effect, and I quotes, all of your opponent's Pokemon's weakness is now psychic. And it says the amount of weakness doesn't change, so I guess that's the multiplier, which can theoretically change. And yeah,
Yeah,
so that's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I do like the art too. It's a cool looking Pokemon. Um, the on the V victory symbol where you win if you're down to one prize, you're probably going to win anyway. I mean, I guess if control comes back, like with the Mew V Union deck, right? If you had this in your deck, they couldn't get down to just one one. You couldn't. They couldn't let you take five prizes before setting up, because then you could get this into play, get a couple of attachments, and still win possibly. Let's say so.
Yeah,
If you're trying to counter that, but that's a very niche situation.
something similar to that though is in the against a deck, which is a pretty a somewhat common strategy where your opponent kind of wants to make you take 8 prizes.
Yeah.
You KO a V Max and a V or something like that, and then they leave you with a V Max or a V in play, and now you're like, oh, what am I gonna do? I can't really one shot this. Well, now you can just win and essentially, in some ways, one shot it.
Right. Now you don't want to get this in play until the very end because as you said, the HP is low at 180. Again, the V star is also low for a V star. The first attack 70 times heads isn't good because you're gonna need to get the Glimwood Tangle there just to get your one, and then you're probably gonna get 140 consistently, but that's really not enough.
I mean, with
Uh,
weakness, it's enough, and so
It is, but you have to use an attack. The V Star power is
yeah,
an attack, not an ability. So you're attacking, taking no prizes, doing no damage one turn. And then it's as long as that Pokemon's in play. So if your opponent's able to knock you out the next turn, you got nothing.
yeah. So, um, yeah,
So
it's not great, I guess.
uh, you, the only yeah, I mean, unless you could see a psychic deck that setting up the weakness is really key, and you can sacrifice a turn to make it happen, but that doesn't seem that likely.
Yeah, I think this is these are C, I guess. They're not hot trash, but they're okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a fun thing to try out. I put it in C. I suspect it's not really going to become a part of a viable deck,
Yeah,
but I'd love to see myself be wrong on these points too.
yeah. Should I put it at like bottom of C?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they're. Should we put them in F?
You can. I mean, the fact that it's an attack, right? If it was a V star ability, it would be very different.
Yeah, like the fact you could just use it and then it dies and then you don't get anything. That's pretty horrible. And it's 3 colorless, so it's not great. There's some fun cards, but I'm actually gonna put the V up to C, because it
Okay.
could theoretically be useful. Um, Now we got 4 more V stars, and these V stars are very decent, I think. Um, I'll start off with a Alolan Vulpix V star, which is, first of all, it's water, which is fine. A good type, you got Palkia and stuff. But it has 240 HP, which I'm pretty sure is the lowest we've seen so far. And that's pretty bad. Um, that's like there are Vs with more health than that. Like it's atrocious. But it has 2 interesting attacks. Oh, and again, the V on this isn't very interesting. And has relatively low health, but it's not like as atrocious as the V star is relative to the other V stars. It has Snow Mirage, which is 160 for colorless, but then it has a really powerful effect that this the so when it goes through effects, I didn't actually realize that the first time I read this, but that's nice. And then during your next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon with abilities. And by the way, as I talked about with Force Seal Stone, if they attach that, they can still hit you. The Pokemon doesn't have the ability. The tool card has the ability, so they can still hit you with that. But it has a V Star power for free, which is I think the first time we've seen this, like a free V Star
Hmm.
power. I'm not sure about that. This does 70 for each of your opponent's Pokemon V in play, so that's quite solid, especially for free.
Okay, yeah, so that's interesting. As I'm processing it quickly, the Vulpix at the V at 190 is weak, but not terrible. But then the V Max at 240 is just awful for its HP. Which is interesting that they made the V kind of reasonable, but the V Max just terrible.
Yeah.
So Snow Mirage, it's three energy, one's water, and water is obviously with Melanie. You can get that set up in one turn. 160 is decent, not great, but decent. But then, um, yeah, I mean, a lot of Pokemon have abilities, so it's useful there potentially.
Yeah, and I believe even after Arceus uses its after Arceus uses its V Star power, it still has an ability, it just can't
Right.
use it, so it's still immune to that, which is nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of Pokemon it will help with that, and that V Star attack is for no energy is obviously very nice. Um, and 70 times each of their V in play, so you could one shot a lot of things then potentially.
Yeah,
So what's
it's probably like
so,
hitting 140, maybe 210, but it's solid.
yeah, I mean you're not one shotting like Mew, but Mew doesn't can't
Well,
be happy about seeing this either.
no, you probably. Wait, are you not? You VMAX?
I think you're one shotting it, right?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you
Depending
are. Yeah, I think
on
you are.
if they have Meloetta in play or not, right?
Um, Wait, why does that matter? Oh, as if and they don't have
Each
other.
of their V's in play, right?
Yeah, yeah. So if they have like Meloetta and
So they
then
need so they need five V's in play, right? And you'd one shot
yeah, I guess
A Mew V
five.
Max.
So um, yeah,
So I'm just trying to think through. So with five V's in play, you can one shot anything.
this probably doesn't beat Mew though. Like the V Star power is really good,
No,
but then they just one shot you. So
correct. No, that's true. I'm just anything really tanky. You can, Duraludon V Max again. If they have enough, but they'd keep the bench size low enough.
yeah,
You wouldn't do
that's a
it.
bad matchup though. Like they're gonna hit through you as well.
I
So
mean, water's good. So this isn't going to carry a deck as I'm thinking about it, but it could be useful in a water deck, and there are good water decks out there, as we know.
yeah, like splashing this into Palkia is just could be really good. And the free V Star attack as well. It could just see play for its V Star attack. The issue is that you're giving up a two prizer, but it's not like a horrible downside. And just being able to quickly eliminate a big threat on your opponent's side of the board could be a reason to play it.
Yeah, I mean, if you can one shot a V Star with this, giving up even prize trade, where you don't have to attach any energy this turn, could put you ahead in the overall game.
Yeah.
Now, if you're playing Palkia, though, I don't think I want to use this V Star attack over Palkia's V Star power.
Yeah, but you
So
could put this in any type of deck, because it's free.
that's true. Yes.
Like
So
even something like I'm not sure. I can't think of any great examples off the top of my head, but pretty much like, anything that something that doesn't want to use a V Star power, but it could be really good.
yeah, I think because of that, it lets you get creative with it, which is always nice to see.
I'd say this probably belongs in A tier. It's quite good.
You could put it there. I don't know that it's really going to end up being very viable
I don't know.
either. That's the question we don't know,
I
but
think
it could be.
it walls off so much though. Like if you're playing, let's say you're playing Lost Box, you're gonna be really sad to see this because they're obviously just gonna one shot you all the time, and then you're not gonna be able to do anything to them with Cramorant or with Radiant Charizard. So you're just gonna be like not attacking and not doing a ton of damage, and they're
Hmm.
just gonna be taking the prize advantage. And then also against like Arceus, you're probably not happy to see
Yep.
this. Against if you're playing Palkia, you're probably not that happy to see this. Against
Yep.
or using Gudra, you're not that happy to see this. And there are
Hmm.
so many decks that just don't really want to see this. There are decks like Giratina though that can take it out really easily. Duraludon is probably relatively happy to see this. So
Now, Drellin has the ability, though.
no, but they hit through effects of attacks.
Oh, that's true. Correct.
So
You're right. So they're gonna. Yep.
I mean Duraludon's not that good right now anyway. But
No. Um. Yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see what it can what to pair it with. I think is the question with this.
yeah, but I think it's A. I would be surprised if this doesn't see competitive play. I think not necessarily like an amazing competitive play, but I think it'll be solid in some decks.
Yeah, and as like a one or two of the V Star, it's not you're not building a deck around it. I don't
Yeah,
think.
I don't think building a deck around it is horrible though. I think it's an okay Pokemon to build a deck around, but I think it's a great Pokemon to tech in.
Yeah, I if I was to build a deck around it, which I wouldn't mind trying, I need an alternate attacker when I'm not walling people where my opponent's not getting walled off enough.
I guess the big issue is obviously the low health and the low damage, but it's
Yeah.
not like if you're against something like like Giratina, you still might be able to trade fine with them. So I don't know, but
Yeah.
I think this is A.
Okay.
Now we're going on to I guess let's talk about Mawile V Star here. This one's interesting. Again, I think the V isn't very interesting. Um, can discard an energy from them on a coin flip for one energy, which is good, I guess. But you're probably just going to be using colorless energy in this deck, so you can tech in whatever else you want. It has an interesting attack called Sudden Eater, um, and it does 90 for two colors, obviously pretty underwhelming. It also has 260 health, which is fine, and a bit below the normal, but it's not horribly low. Um, it does 90, and if you moved into the active, you do 90 more. So you can do double turbo, and you only do no, you only do 160, or you do 180. It's solid damage for one energy, especially. And then you have an amazing, a good V Star power at least, Star Rondo. If this Pokemon is on your bench, you may use this ability. It has to be on the bench, which is a bit of a downside, obviously. But switch this with your active Pokemon, then gust one of your opponent's Pokemon up. So ideally, this will be used just as a gust. It's similar to Leafeon V-Star's V-Star power in the fact that you gust. It's a bit less controllable, but it's not bad still. You can obviously target down whenever you want. The downside of having to have it on the bench isn't too bad because you want to move into the active anyway, and I think it's overall a solid attacker, especially being colorless attack cost.
Yeah. My concern, your points in the favor are very true. The HP is low for a V star, which I don't like, and then you're not doing a ton of damage. Even you swing in, you're doing 180, probably 160 because you're probably using you're probably doing 160 to do a
Yeah.
single attachment there, which is okay, but you have other options. So then part of it is the typing going to be relevant? Maybe it is. Metal weakness isn't a bad thing now. If you want to hit for psychic weakness, and obviously being able to gust without using your supporter for turn, that is quite nice.
Yeah, I think to me one of the most appealing parts of this is that it's just so simple. It's like so easy to do that damage. It's probably one attachment, could be two, and that's fine as well. You could use Melanie or something, and you can put it in with anything. So you could do like Suicune Mawile or something, and it's like a solid V star power, solid attack, and I think it could be just a Pokemon that like is thrown in with something else, and so you have these two attackers, and the other attacker can be anything, and I think it could be really good. I don't think it'll be like the best, but I think it can see play in some very good decks, I imagine.
Yeah, and it's gonna make it very hard for a Pokemon V Star that's weak to Psychic to do well because this is just gonna take out one of them very easily in the course of the
Yeah.
game.
I mean, it doesn't actually one shot Urshifu, but it's with double turbo on.
It's got
Actually,
GT.
is double turbo? I think that's before weakness. I'm not 100% sure, but um,
Yeah, I believe that's right. So it does 160 times two.
yeah. So and Urshifu has 330.
Yeah, so you need 10 more, which if that comes down to it, you can obviously get 10 more with a goon or something.
Yeah, or choice spell, which you'll probably play in the deck.
Yeah.
But I think this is an A tier card. I think it's not an amazing A tier card, but I think it's a card that will be good. It'll be decent throughout its whole lifetime in the format, and at some points it will make up. It will be in one of the top 5 decks.
All right. I mean, I probably wouldn't put it as high myself, but it's certainly a card to keep in mind, and it is gonna have its uses at time and
Yeah,
find its way into some top decks. Occasionally, I don't think it's going to consistently be in top decks, but it will be at times.
yeah. So I think it's I guess I'll put it in B. It's It's good though. I think I'll put it below the area dose here. But I think it's a solid card. Now we're gonna talk about Lugia V Star, which is something. First of all, the V. Well, one, the V has amazing art here. Don't know the artist, but it looks really cool. The card's not that good though. Um, it's fine. 220 health has some can draw some cards, do some damage, generic stuff. But then Lugia V Star has this attack for it's still 280 health, lightning weakness, fighting resistance. So solid stats there. And then you have the attack Royal Tornado does 220 for 4 colorless and discard any stadium in play, which isn't amazing, right? Discarding stadiums is very mediocre. And 220 for 4 is quite expensive. But then you have this honestly insane ability called Assemble Star. That's kind of a strange ability name. It's probably mistranslated, but who knows? It says during a turn you may choose up to 2 colorless Pokemon from your discard pile. However, they can't be Pokemon with a rule box, so they have to be single prizers. And put them onto your bench. These can be stage twos or whatever. And then obviously that's it. You can't use more than one V-Star power per game. But this it obviously has synergy with the Archeops, and it just puts them into play, and that's really good.
Yeah, it's that ability is really what makes it good. I mean, the HP is fine. It's the HP kind of you're looking for a V and a V star. The attack cost of 4 energy is that's rough. Um,
Yeah, but you can
so
power it up in one turn easily with the Archeops.
yeah, you can. But I don't want to have to use that ability of the Archeops to power this up for that attack for one turn because I can't use the V Star power again. So that I don't
Yeah,
like that. But being able to bring in some stage twos directly into the game is good. Whether it's something like an Archeops with an ability or a stage two that you want to attack with, which is always tricky to set up. It opens that up as a possibility too.
yeah. I was thinking honestly, um, something really interesting is that you do Lugia, you do the I was talking about Archeops, and you said Blissey, I think, and I said
Hmm.
it's not that hard to get into play because you can do Lugia. So you can maybe do 2 Lugia, 2 Archeops, get those Archeops, maybe 3 Archeops because you really want to get 2 into play. And now you're accelerating 4 special energy from your deck per turn, and anytime they get
Right.
discarded, Blissey will get them back. So you can get like all for your powerful colorless energy without even attacking or accelerating from the discard, and that's like 200. Wait, no, it's like 200 extra damage, which is just insane.
Um, yeah, it's certainly whether Archeops is what you want to use or not. It's a really neat idea there. Is that the V Star Pokemon I want? Is that the V Star ability I want to be relying on instead of something else? That's where it gets tricky. You
Yeah,
know,
it's like an ability. It's one of those V Star powers that like defines the deck. Like without it, it's pretty bad. But I think with it, and with I think Archeops is probably. Can you think of any other targets that are particularly good?
I not off the top of my head. I mean, I'm trying to think through something an attacking stage two,
Yeah,
but nothing. Nothing comes to mind. But part of it is, of course, they're stage twos, and you don't get them set up enough. The ability to set
yeah.
two up in one turn, it does open up possibilities. So it'll give the opportunity to really go through all the stage twos again with a fresh eye.
Yeah, it's I think there's one that I can think of. It's an Ursulana, which is a color stage 2 that I believe does you recover 2 cards from your discard pile. So pretty much it's like a control deck, which could be good. It probably won't be though because you don't really want to put out this V Star. Your opponent's just going to pick it off at some point, and it's. I think the fact though that pairing it with Archeops could be insane. I think so you enjoy Blissey a lot. I know. What do you
Hmm.
think about Lugia with Archeops and Blissey?
Blissey, right? So you're gonna do one turn with the Lugia,
Yeah, and it's not an
and
attack as well, which is nice.
right, what you're gonna do is as I'm trying to think it. So you're gonna evolve into Lugia. You're gonna use the Assemble Star, put your two Archeops on the bench, and then you're probably going to attack with Lugia that turn, possibly.
You could attack with Blissey as well.
I could. It depends what I think is going to survive. At some point, the Lugia I think is going to get knocked out,
Yeah,
or it's going to get ignored if my opponent
yeah,
chooses
yeah,
that path. But I'm not going to win the game with it, so I might just want to attack, do some damage. So then the following turn I can one shot it with my Blissey, and that Blissey then would have huge energy on it because I've accelerated 4 energy, attached one, and accelerated with the attack again. So now my opponent's I'm doing huge damage after that.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, and you
and
can
you do
stick
have
on the V Guard energy as well to give yourself a bit more bulk. Obviously, it won't stack, but getting one
mhm.
on there is it's quite nice.
Yeah, and it's colorless too, so you have Sharon's Care as an option. I mean, yeah. So, um, which you might want to do too, just if it gets damaged, just to get it out of there, because once you've done the V Star power, you might just want to get rid of it. Um, so
Yeah.
I can see that as something to try for sure. Um,
I think this is top of B. I think it's combining it with Archeops. I think the two probably almost exist together, and I think they're a very strong combo.
Yeah, I think top of B certainly is fine. I mean, I can almost see it as A. I like it maybe more than some of these other Pokemon we've been discussing, I gotta say.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll put an AIS. Admittedly, I'm a big fan of combo decks. There's a deck I made, or I didn't necessarily originate it, but it's a deck that I kind of messed around with and really loved it. It's I called it Darkest Box. Where you'd use Greninja Zoroark's GX attack, which I'm sure most of you probably don't know what that does, but it puts dark Pokemon from your disco pile onto the bench. Obviously, very similar to this. You'd put in Incineroar GXs onto the bench, and then you'd accelerate to them, and which is very similar to this. Um, and that deck wasn't that good, but this deck, one, you don't need to use your attack to do it, and the two, you can accelerate to anything. So honestly, I think this combo is gonna be insane. Or it might be a bit clunky though, which is a bit of an issue.
Yeah, I really wish the attack cost was say one less. I would just really jump up in my view because then I could the energies I could accelerate to some other Pokemon, not just to this one that probably gets knocked out.
Yeah, and I think Archeops has to be to one of your Pokemon. You can't split up one Archeops between
Right.
two. It's not a huge deal, but it's certainly impactful. Um, and also we don't have ways of recovering special energy, which is kind of iffy.
Right. Well, there's the what is it? Cynthia's Ambition, the one with the four options. Is that the right card?
No, Roseanne's
No.
backup, I
Roseanne's
think.
backup.
Or
Yeah, which
Roseanne's
can get
is it backup or yeah, backup? I think.
I think so.
Um,
Which gets one back, but that's limited.
it's okay. Or you could do Silene as well.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but I think they're going to be quite good and very fun to mess around with. Um, Now we have what might be my favorite card from the set, or it could be the Lugia Archeop combo. And this is the dragon Pokemon. We talked about Lance, how there's other dragon Pokemon. It's this. It's a Regidrago V-Star. Well, there's the V, which isn't that good. It can accelerate energy to itself by like milling your deck, which is questionable. And it has a mediocre attack with the V-Star. Dragon type, 280 health. So very good. We've seen multiple dragon types with, I think, 280 health. Actually, I don't remember how much health Gudra has. It might have 270. But dragon types with big HP, no weakness, which is amazing. And it has an expensive attack cost, honestly. But that doesn't mean it's not good. It's grass, fire. Um, so you can accelerate to it with like Leafeon and Gardenias and stuff like that. But then it says copy, choose one of your attacks from one of your dragon Pokemon in your disco pile and use it as this attack. And obviously, you ignore the attack cost of those Pokemon. And then you have an amazing, a good V Star power, at least called Legacy Star. Once during your turn, you may discard 7 cards from the top of your deck, which is pretty brutal. But then you may choose up to 2 cards from your discard pile and reveal them, put them into your hand. It could be those cards you discarded, but it does not have to be.
Wow, that's yeah. What an interesting card. I mean, that the V Star Power where you discard 7. that's running a risk. Getting rid of
Yeah.
sevens because you recover two, but you're probably gonna lose a couple cards that you're really gonna be sad to see go. So that might not be overly useful.
Yeah.
But the attack, Dream Dragon's 3 energy, tough to pay, but it does have no weakness, so you hopefully can make it tanky. You got the stadium to heal and things like that. It reminds me of the Mewtwo and Mew some, but which in a sense the Mew was that, right? It could copy any Mew VMAX, could copy any
Yeah.
Fusion Strike, but it has such a limited set to choose from. Here, it's any Dragon Pokemon, so you have a greater set of cards to choose from. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and also, I said earlier that Dragonite had some reason that it was going to be better. It's because of this. You can copy Dragonite, so now obviously you need to get the energy on the first Regidrago, which is kind of hard, but you should be able to get there within a few turns pretty easily. And then you just do Dragonite with Energy Hurricane and get the next Regidrago powered up. So, and also, a few things about the V Star power. Obviously, you can just ignore it and use like Force Steel Stone or something else if you want. And then you could also use it. I've heard people point out you could use it at the end of the game, and you could even build your whole deck. It doesn't matter. But then you grab the game-winning boss or something like that. And I think that might be the best use of it because obviously early game you're just milling random cards from the top of your deck, and they could be the cards you need. Like you could hit 3 crucial cards and just be in a really horrible spot. It's like Arceus, but much worse in that sense early game. But late game it could be really good.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. That idea of late game, I hadn't thought of that. You're going to get to a spot where you're probably maybe milling yourself to 0 cards in deck, so you've got to win that turn or else. But if you need a boss, a boss is in deck, you're going to get it and you win. That's good. And I guess with the Dragonite, you want to get a Dragonite in the discard, get the Regidrago set up, the V Star, because that adds actually a lower attack cost.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. No, yeah, you don't want Dragonite in play. You want Dragonite in the discard so you can copy it.
Right, copy, and then you set up other Regidragos with it, I guess. You don't ever want to use the Dragonite
No,
actually in
probably
play, right?
not. It's a stage 2 with 4 energy, so probably not.
So I guess it's a Regidrago attacking deck with like you could be a 4/3 Regidrago line, a couple Dragonites that you discard. And then I guess you lose Lost Zone or something. You got to get your 3 energy on to start with.
Yeah.
But
So, yeah, I think Gardenias or Leafeon V could be good ways as well.
because
But
Gardenia's is to any doesn't have to be a grass
yes, it has to
Pokemon.
be to the bench though. But so let's talk about some of the cards you could use with it.
Yeah.
I've seen some. So one, you want to pivot. There's a Garchomp
Yeah.
V, which it has I think it was an Astral Radiance. It's for your treat, so that's nice. And then it has an attack for I think it's 4 energy of fighting and water and something the colorless, but it doesn't matter for this. I believe you discard all the energy, or it might be just be 2 energy attached to it, but you do, I think it's a 220 snipe anywhere. So that's really good. It can be used to win the game. You don't even need that game winning boss anyway. If you have Garchomp. You also have, of course, just some really great dragon Pokemon. You got Duraludon to do 220 and hit through effects. That's nice. You have Giratina V-Star, both with a
Yeah.
good attack that does 280 and just pretty much one-shots anything. You do have to Lost Zone 2 energy attached to, but not necessarily horrible for the fact that you're just mowing down your opponents. And then you have a Surin Gudra V-Star, where you can just have this bulk and having all these different options. There's also there's I think Dialga from might be Evolving Skies, which stops them from attacking. And there's also Zygarde, which does a snipe for each 40 snipe for each prize your opponents take in. So it could be up to 200 snipe at the end of the game. Obviously less than Garchomp, but it still it doesn't discard the energy. So you got a ton of really good options.
Yeah, that's a really fun card and gonna give a lot of options. And I think there's gonna be at least one good deck out of it, if not multiple good decks. So, I mean, it's at least an A tier, right?
I
If
think this
not,
is an S tier. I think this might be
I
the
think
best
that's
card in this
fair.
set. I think it. I don't think it's the best card in this set. I think Serena and Curly are better, but um, I think it might be the best deck in format. Um, and I don't think that's crazy to assume.
Yeah, it's at least it's good enough. People are gonna flock to it. It's going to be the dominant deck for a while when it first comes out, so be prepared to deal
Yeah,
with it. Whether it stays the best or something else is better, not sure, but it's really interesting.
yeah, and it's like it's pretty much better than all the other dragon Pokemon we've had because it can be any of them, and they've all had expensive attack costs. So the issue is attaching the energy. There are a few ways, as I said,
Hmm.
Leafeon, Gardenias, and you said the Lost Zone engine. So those are all certainly viable, not necessarily great ways, but with such great payoff, especially with the bulk of this Pokemon, you can use it like Hisuian Gudra, which is really good,
Hmm.
or you could use it like Giratina, which is really good, and a Dragonite as well. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because do you just play this V and V star and just play the other V stars of the other dragon ones and just discard them so you don't ever worry about playing them? There's a lot of things to think about. It's interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, is there anything? Wait, are you looking at the tier list, or are you not?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I see.
anything here that you think? I think Sunflora is a bit too high up, maybe. That
I
discards energy.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of memey and may go down, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna move this down like here. I think it's not like crazy high for where it should be, but I think it's not amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think where things are positioned are fair for now. It's the things in the B and C tier are going to shift around. There's going to be some things that are going to move up to A tier, but it's hard to predict. Some things are going to, some of the Bs are going to fall out of B. Some of the Cs will rise up, I think.
Yeah. But honestly, this set's so cool. There are so many fun like decks.
Yep.
what are you most excited to play from this set?
Yeah, it's really an interesting set of stuff here. You got the Mimi single prize stuff that definitely want to give that a go. Um, obviously talking to the Ho-Oh-V, I really want to try that. I don't know that it's going to work, but it just seems so fun to try and do.
Yeah.
Um, and it's going to be expensive to get, but the Reggie Drago is going to be really powerful.
Yeah.
And give so many options that one to get that's probably going to be the target as soon as I
Mhm.
can swing that one.
Yeah, I
How
have
about
a
you?
probably so there's a lot of really cool stuff here.
Hmm.
I'm really looking forward to. Admittedly, I'm really looking forward to playing the Curlia engine. It's the Cinccino engine, except now you have access to these stage twos. They're like super strong that can like excite energy and search out your supporters,
Hmm.
which is insanely good. So having a nice like consistent engine like that's really cool. The Archeops Lugia combo seems really fun. It's
Hmm.
my type of thing. Um, the Incineroar. I've loved the Empoleon line, and the Incineroar looks
Hmm.
fun. I don't know if it'll be quite strong enough. Um, and probably, well, obviously, like the Pikachu line stuff seems fun, and then
Hmm.
probably a Alolan Vulpix V-Star as well. Just a fun card, I think,
Yeah.
to mess around with. There's so much cool stuff here.
Yeah, this is a set to get excited about. It's going to be fun for the meta and a lot of interesting ideas to try out.
Mhm. But yeah, I think that's everything. As I said, there are some cards that weren't in this. Pretty much all the cards that weren't in this are bad and like uninteresting. So, yeah, if there's anything you think that we missed, though, you can leave that in the comment down below. As well as not all these cards will necessarily be in the set. Actually, I'm not sure about that. It's a bit confusing to figure it out, but all the good ones are like I know Reggie Draco is. I know Vulpix Lugia. And like the really strong trainers and engine cards will be in there. So yeah, this set's gonna be super cool. Comment down below what you're most excited to play. They're all, as I said, this set's super cool. And also, if you appreciate this, this is obviously very long. I admittedly I don't know if anyone's going to be watching until the end here, but if you are, I'd appreciate if you liked the video and obviously if you subscribe to the channel. not exactly sure what kind of content I'm going to be doing going forward. I have a few different ideas. But yeah, I really appreciate you watching this, and I'm excited to try these out, and I'm obviously excited to see all of you in the next video.